All right, we're live. We're back here again for our weekly breakdown slash reaction to Wheel of Time, the TV show. Today we're going to talk about episodes 4 and 5. And today we have Tristram, possibly Andrew popping in a little later. And I am here today. I am the Ogier centrist, aka Woke centrist or Dusty Cubes. So, uh, before we jump right into 4 and 5, Tristram has gotten a chance to check out some of the bonus features. We're just going to talk
Yeah,
briefly about those bonus features. What do you think about those animated shorts?
I think they're all excellent. The animation on them is brilliant. The fact it fleshes out a lot of the background, even exploring some stuff that wasn't they didn't have time for or didn't be able to go into in the show. And I really don't think they should have. Like I don't think that's a mistake that they missed that. I think it's actually a good thing because the show doesn't need it and the show needs to move quickly. But these add so much more. The animation is beautiful. The storytelling is excellent. The voice acting seems brilliant to me. I feel they're really immersive, and because they're animated, it allows them to have some visual styles and do some stuff that would be probably very expensive to do with real life. And like what they did was great. But one of my favorite things is the framing device, like how they show them as almost in-world storytelling or in-world
Hmm.
lessons. I love that. I'm a sucker for that. One of the things I love about the Brandon Sanderson series is that he has his Ars Arcanum, where he explains the lore of the world in the books as an appendix, and he has it as an in-universe artifact, which is
Hmm.
just excellent. And one of the things it shows is an in-universe artifact from Wheel of Time, which is the map, of course, which is meant to be an
Hmm.
actual map that you would see in the Westlands. And so I really like that. I love the additional detail. I just think all of the bonus content, not only these shorts, but also everything on X-Ray is really, really good. I'm a big fan of all of it.
All right, here's a loaded question. Were there any fears that were relieved by some of these short um, animated clips that you
Yeah,
had concerning some
absolutely.
of the lore?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, it did. Especially as there's a couple of things like, and not only these animated clips as well. Though this Sidene one was one of my favorites for that exact reason, because I was concerned that they were just going to talk about um, there's only the one power and it should only be used by women, and actually it's just like when men use it, it suddenly goes evil. And they didn't. They've clearly shown that that might be what the people in world currently think, but it is clear that the showrunners understand that there are two halves to the one power, the Sadian Sedar, the yin and the yang. And that to me is very, very important. I feel it's crucial to the lore. It's not a small thing, it's a big thing. And actually, even as the episodes have evolved, it's shown that they've got more of an understanding of that than was immediately apparent. So I feel the more I watch, the happier I am, is my actual truth. Um, and one of the things as well is, like I said, I mentioned the X-ray comments.
Yes.
Like some of those even have mentioned things like a bit of additional lore detail, even things where it's like in the books this doesn't happen. Like for example, not that it's wrong, but like for example, when it shows, as we're going to see in episode 5, it shows the warder barracks. That
Hmm.
they never go to the warder barracks. We know it exists; it's a canon place, but they never go there. So the fact that they've like created this set, brilliant. That's just exploring like a hidden hole, and I think that's what the show should do, and I absolutely love it. So I'm a really big fan of these animated shorts, and I recommend them to everyone. If you struggle to find them, I did. You need to
Hmm.
go into the X-ray, click View All Content, and then go to bonus content in the View All Content to be able to see them. It is not easy to
Yes.
find.
There's another caveat as well. Um, One other thing you need to note when you're checking out the bonus content, you will only see the most recent content if you're viewing the most recent episodes. So, like for instance, if you go to episode 4 and check the bonus content, you will not see the 5th animated short, or you won't see any of the episode 5 behind the scenes content.
No,
So I don't know why they built it this way. It's a little confusing.
I
Hopefully
think it's
they
for
clear this up.
yeah. That second thing I think they do for spoilers,
Oh, that's
because
possible. Yeah.
yeah, because yeah, I've noticed that they didn't like, for example, the Manetheren one is in episode 2, and the song where
Ah.
in it's revealed about Manetheren is in episode 2, and like
Mm,
they've got the White Tower in episode 5, so the bonus content about the White Tower is in episode 5. So it means that
ah.
you don't spoil yourself by seeing bonus content you haven't got to in the show if you're doing it sequentially. But the way they've made it hard to find, I find bizarre. Bizarre. I don't think
Yeah, they
anyone
just should
tells
have
any truth.
made it like accessible from like the episodes
Yeah.
area.
Yep.
But was there any of the
Absolutely.
behind the scenes stuff that you thought was pretty interesting?
All of it, man. I mean, but I'm like a Wheel of Time nerd, right? So I absolutely loved it. One of the things I really liked was I watched all three of the legacy things. So Robert Jordan
Mm-hmm.
to Brandon Sanderson to Rafe Judkins, and I love how they did that. I thought that was very cleverly done. That idea of someone's had to the Wheel of Time fans have already kind of braced themselves for someone else to screw it up, and he didn't screw it up, and it's kind of like suggesting brace yourself. And like some people did have some concerns with Brandon even after he started. Like they said, like for example, one of the common repeated criticisms, not one of mine, but one that you hear on the message boards, which dates how long ago it was when Brandon took over. There were message boards,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the concerns was that he didn't do Matt very well. Like didn't feel like Matt felt different than when Jordan wrote him, and Sanderson responded to that and improved. And that's generally the general opinion of the fandom, is that he did improve and finish the series extremely well. And I think this series is growing my confidence in Rafe, that the things he's leaving out, it's okay. That he's still giving me the meat of the story. I'm still feeling that these characters are right, and in some ways he's even refreshed them and made them interesting in slightly different ways. And I just think
Mm-hmm.
that's excellent. Yeah, one of the things that you'll notice is that the scores on like things like Rotten Tomatoes and Amazon are only rising as more people are watching this, which is a very
Yeah,
encouraging sign.
I did notice that. Like initially, there were some pretty poor review bombs by upset people who weren't properly prepared, I guess, for the different changes that the show was going to make.
Yeah,
I
and
know
what?
if anyone had been following, it was kind of clear that they were going to make some pretty big changes,
Yeah,
but
they said so.
some people were not ready for those.
And one of the other things, like I know someone who's like, as soon as she found out that Tom was going to be playing a guitar and not a harp, she's like, I'm not watching it based on that. And you're just like, get a grip. But one of the things it says on like the Rotten Tomatoes site, one of the things that's really interesting is it says it has some criticism. Then it says, but the show seems to have done an excellent job of bringing in the uninitiated, and
Hmm.
I firmly stand behind that comment. I've recommended the show to a lot of people because I'm desperate to talk to people about Wheel of Time, as you can tell
Hmm.
by me being on this podcast. But one of the things I can say is that the people who are watching the show who have not read the books are all genuinely telling me that they're loving the show, that they're excited to see where it goes, that they're finding there's a lot of mystery for them, and I'm desperately not spoilering. So there's some of them,
Yes.
for example, who are really in the who's the dragon,
Hmm.
like that is a genuine thing that they're enjoying and considering and theorizing about. And people are figuring out things like about the power, like are these rings
Right.
involved? Does bonding a water mean you are having sex and all that
Hmm.
kind of thing? And just like I love it because I know that a lot of it's erroneous, but that's fine. That's great. That's
Hmm.
exactly the kind of thing that hooks people. It's exactly the kind of thing that makes people want to come back and find out more and
Right.
more.
So just to let everybody know who's watching, this is a spoiler-filled podcast. So if you're
Yeah.
not familiar with the books, This
Sorry.
is not really the thing for you. We haven't really spoiled anything yet, anything major.
Mm,
Um, but I'm just letting everybody know, yes, we will be talking about pop points in the future and things of
yeah.
that nature. And one of the
And we
things I
kind
want
of
to
did.
remark on
Yeah.
is look at how they're setting up the water bond.
Oh
Now,
yeah.
imagine what happens to Rand and how
Yeah.
that's going to impact the audience.
Yeah.
Because we
Yeah.
know they're really digging into that water bond and showing what it does. But they're,
Absolutely.
mhm,
And the relevance of losing it, the risk of losing it.
the risk of losing it. And then, what happens when you put that on somebody without their consent.
Yeah.
So I think he's doing a good job at building exactly what this would mean if somebody entered this type of relationship without their consent. And um, I don't know if it was remarked on the show, but they said it's like a bond deeper than marriage or
It
something
is.
like that.
Yeah, that's
So
what the show's using to compare it to. They're saying deeper than the connection you feel with your own child, deeper than the connection you feel with a wife. It is
yeah,
like more than that. And I think that's a good way of describing it. And like I saw a reaction podcast where they're like, he shouldn't have reacted like that. And like, well, think about it. Think about how people act like when they lose their child, when their child is murdered, or
hmm,
when they lose their spouse and they think they're responsible for their death, and how that can affect them mentally in the real world. And then
right,
imagine if there was something deeper than that. And that's what Robert Jordan is challenging us to believe, that there could be something deeper, that through this magic, you can actually feel what the other person feels, not just have empathy. You can literally partially be part of them. And that's a cool thing that fantasy can do that other kind of writing can't do.
hmm.
Yeah,
All
you can say
right. So
what if.
let's. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm just saying. I just think that's the coolest thing about fantasy. Like sometimes people look down at fantasy, like, oh, if you're a real literature, you wouldn't use fantasy as a crutch. But I don't think that's what fantasy is. I think fantasy is saying, let's have all the cool things of normal stories, but we want to be able to say, what if? What if there
Hmm.
was something deeper than a normal romantic attachment? What if there was something so deep that it made friendship look like only the first level of a 10-level process? And I think that's what they're building up the bond to be. It's those things,
Hmm.
but beyond. Sorry, go on, Dusty. Let's get into this.
Okay, okay. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of the major scenes in
Mm.
chronological order. Man, okay. Episode 4, the cold open. So this is entirely crafted by the show. This is not anything. It's something that's alluded to in the books, but we don't
Mm.
have any first person experience of it.
No.
And this is a scene where we get the first on-screen appearance of the false dragon, uh, Logain,
Logain.
and he is gathering. Well, he's pretty much single-handedly, it looks like, taking on the Gildan army
Well, I
at
think
this
I
point.
think I think the concept is it's certainly in the books, and I see no reason for that. Like he's got some followers, like
Hmm.
there are some people following the dragon, and but it's obviously mainly him, and it's been established already by now that someone wielding the one power is the equivalent of an army. But I'm sure he has. We can hear people fighting in the background, so I'm sure he has followers, but nowhere near enough. But I love this scene. I love so much about it. The armor, the way they're showing different nations look different, and
Hmm.
the fact that they use the proper stars on the shields. Like for someone like who's a book fan, that's like yes, yes, yes. Thank you for that. They didn't have
And the
to have
set
shields
was
with three
good
stars.
too. It was a nice set.
Oh, yeah, it was a gorgeous set, and like that's like from the books. We don't see this scene ever, so it's like a cool. It's almost like a deleted scene from the books, and this is the kind of thing I love the show doing because it's still in tune with the story, but they're giving us that little bit more that maybe Robert Jordan didn't get that chance to show us, and I just think that's
Hmm.
great.
So Gildan, I didn't know like that Gildan kind of looks like it has an arid climate about it, and it
Well, it's
looks like
further south.
yeah, and their architecture does look like it's based off of uh, Middle Eastern
Mm.
type of architecture. So one of the interesting things is we see Logain meet up with the king of Gildan,
Mm.
and they have a conversation. The king definitely thinks that, okay, I'm done. This guy's has the one up on me, and I'm finished. So he
Yeah, I've been
does.
beaten.
Yeah, he does make an attack of desperation, and Logain
Mm.
stops him using the one power. One thing that's noticeable here is there's no hand gestures.
Yeah.
So we see that the power does not require this.
Hmm.
And we
Which is
also see
good.
that yeah, which is good. And we see that his power is cloaked in like this darkness because we've seen
Mm.
weaves before. So his weaves are at first
Black.
white and then are covered over by this black sludgy type of weave.
And I love that. That's wonderful. That's perfect. That's perfect. That's brilliant. I love everything about that.
And I think that is to symbolize the taint, or what the show's calling the corruption.
100%. That's absolutely what it is, and that's how it's described in the books. Like that, it's this sort of like the power is there underneath it, but every little bit of it is covered with this taint, and that's just fantastic. That's exactly what it should be. And when we think of the yin yang symbol of the dragon's fang against the flame of Tarvalon, in the white and the black, the white representing the Aes Sedai and the black Sidar and the black representing Saidin, even better, right? Even better.
Yeah, even much more, when you're thinking about the classic Aes Sedai symbol.
Yeah.
Um, so as the king of Gildan attempts to attack Logain, he stops him, and Logain then, instead of retaliating against this attack, he convinces him to join up with
Mm.
them. He
Yep.
convinces him that he is the Dragon Reborn, and
Yep.
he's convincing him, hey, you know the prophecies. Look what I've done. Look what I am. You could see me.
Yeah.
One of the things we do have that's pretty interesting here, which I think is a little up for debate, is we see that he gets talking to by some voices. And the
And they're not
portrayal
just.
of these voices are much different than the first time we see a man channeling and going crazy.
Yes,
So
agreed.
I have some doubts whether these mutterings are actual madness or if they're manipulation. I don't know. To me, it's up in the air if it could be both, just because of how it's portrayed.
Agreed. And one, like, absolutely, because it actually make the weaves almost become people. Yeah, like it forms
Right.
actual image. And that is very different from what we saw with the first guy who was just hallucinating. And we know that one of the, not only we, like people who read the books, but actually people who just watched the show know the idea of reincarnation and past
Hmm.
lives. And so we already know there's been past dragons, and this plants in our heads. Are these previous dragons talking to him? Is this his past lives, or is he just insane? And I think that's a question that the show has not yet fully answered. Um,
Hmm.
but I think that's going to be important for later on when other people hear voices. So that's really interesting. I don't think the show wants it to be definitive yet. I think they want
Hmm.
people to that to be speculation. One thing I would say is as well. It's just interesting is I think the show is playing up the dragon as a quasi-religious figure, which of course he
Hmm.
is. But remember, the Wheel of Time lacks churches. It doesn't do like organized religion in the way that we do on our Earth. But like many religious figures of the past, um, even people like the Prophet Muhammad or Jesus Christ in the Christian religion, or even people like in the Jewish religion in sort of the Old Testament sort of era, a lot of them turned their enemies to their allies.
Hmm. Well, I could say
it's a frequent trope for that kind of powerful religious leader.
yes, I can say that as far as religions go, it does not have an impact this early in the season or in the books. It doesn't get that way until I guess you consider what Massima does to be quasi-religious, because
Well, because of the
Massima,
way he treats the dragon.
yeah, the way he treats Rand, um, he does treat him with religious reverence.
And calls
So,
himself a prophet as well.
right. So he's kind of like the only person I could think of that attempts to portray
Mm.
religion in the Wheel of Time. I can't really think of anybody else, to be
The
honest.
the Children of the Light have an aspect of it, but it is weird, kind of the
Yeah.
way they go about it, because they don't like pray or anything. They just like they're like the Templar without the monk side of it. Um, but um,
Right.
but it's just but anyway. But I just think it's really interesting thematically to show that there's this guy who is got supernatural abilities. Some people think he's the devil. Some people think he's the savior, and that he is using his ability to combine military power with his miracles, with also though with the charisma. And we see here he has real, genuine charisma and the
Mhm.
ability to be able to forgive your enemies and turn them into your allies. Because
Mhm.
by taking the King of Gildan and not just beating him, but recruiting him, means that when he recruits a much larger army from Gildan itself, he doesn't need to worry about them rebelling because their leaders have come with them. So they can look and go, oh, I'm still following my king. I'm not
Mhm.
just following this outsider. And both him and Mazrim Tame, I don't know what they're going to do with Mazrim Tame, but
Mhm.
we've noticed that false dragons, when they rise up, they do gather people to them. There is a pull on the threads, and so without going into all that boring detail, the show's showing us that by this impact, by showing, yes, he can take people out, but he can also turn people to his cause.
Right. And one of the interesting aspects too
Mm.
is this is a flashback.
Yeah.
So currently, Logain is captured. So
Yeah.
they're giving us like a brief history of how did he get up to this point. One of the other things I wanted to say about the King of Gildan and like the permeation of the myth of the Dragon Reborn. We got to assume that the King of Gildan must be educated in some way, so
Yeah.
he must be aware of
Hmm.
the prophecies at least in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
We also have Tom, sung a song about the Dragon Reborn. So
Yeah.
even at the lowest levels, like the people are aware of this figure and how this, or at least when it comes to the song about Tom, it's the dragon. And when we're talking about the the theology of the world revolves around reincarnation. And in this
Yeah.
case,
Absolutely.
we're kind of showing that, okay, this thing is full circle now. We have the song that was sung about this man, and then this man now claiming to be that person reborn.
Hmm.
So, if we're going to go into the next key
Yep.
scenes,
In
it's
the
actually
camp.
back at the camp. Yeah, so
Yeah.
we have a couple things happening here. We see it takes at least two women to keep him under wraps. And
Yeah.
even
Shielded.
then, yeah, to keep him shielded. And even then, they describe on how difficult it is.
Mm.
At this point, Moraine gets healed from her wound finally. So,
Because there's a
um,
sister available to do it,
right.
which
And
brings out the point she can't heal herself.
yes, and she attempts to help them out. So the
Hmm.
two Aes Sedai who have been doing this, well, I guess it would be three because there's only three that are given
Strong enough.
names here. We
Mm.
have Leandrin, Karini, and Alana. These are the named Aes Sedai so far.
Yep.
It seems like they've been kind of switching in and out because it takes um, Karine is pretty strong, and it
Yeah.
takes a pretty strong sister to be able to maintain this work. Leandrin's not super strong, but she's capable. Alana's pretty decently powered. So
Yeah.
they're trying to show that, okay, even they're having trouble keeping this guy under wraps. And Moraine, I don't know if she's just has hubris at this point, but she's like, oh no, I'm all healed up. I can handle this. And we can certainly see that she struggles maintaining the shield like right in the beginning. She's having a hard time. Uh,
This is important though because yes, the shield and the visual of the shield is interesting. I think it'd be interesting to discuss. But one of the things this is really important is that not only are they the only three named ones, but like Karini says, there's only three of us strong enough to shield him. And so one of the
mhm,
things this shows is that even though women don't have a full understanding of a man's weaves, just like a man doesn't a woman's, that the show is telling us that shielding him is one of the ways they can tell how strong he is because of how hard
mhm,
he pushes against it. So even though they can't see the force pushing, they know that because it's hard to maintain, he's strong. But also, it shows that women can use their powers in conjunction together to do
right.
something that one couldn't do alone. And it gives us this also gives us a ticking clock for the episode because it's telling us
Mhm,
that basically they're struggling, they're having to work in sequence, they have a long way to go. They're, if one of them breaks, he can break out. So
mhm.
as a storytelling device, I'm going, okay, so when's that going to happen? Because it's like it feels now like it's a matter of time. And then lastly, I think it also shows one thing that's really interesting about the Aes Sedai, which is
Mhm,
that they put a lot of stock in how much power you can wield. And that's
right.
why the only people we get introduced to are the strong ones. They don't give a
Mhm.
crap about the others.
Yeah, the hierarchy of Aes Sedai is definitely those who are stronger are paid deference to.
Yes.
And in this case, Karini is the strongest of the three, which is
Yeah. I don't
why
think she's
she's like,
not as strong as Moraine, though.
oh, I don't know. They don't really
Mm,
say. Well, in the show, at least, they don't really say. I know there's
right.
like power charts and stuff
Yeah.
that we could look at, but
Yeah.
as far as the show goes, visually, Moraine is pretty strong from what we've seen. We actually have not seen Karini do anything other than hold shields. We haven't
Mm.
seen her. She's supposed to be a very competent battle
Yeah, you're
weaver,
right.
but we
Actually,
don't really get to
she's
see that.
and she is the you're right. Because she's meant to be. Now I remember. Like she is the leader of the Green, so maybe she is stronger than Moraine. But Moraine's one of the strongest. I know she is. So
Yeah,
that's.
she's definitely
But
strong.
Karini's up
Um,
there as well. They're both definitely stronger than Leandrin anyway.
yeah, that's for sure.
Mm.
So yeah, they show the struggle. We get to see Sworders doing. I'm sorry, Warders doing sword and I guess axe forms
Mm-hmm.
when they're doing some training. We get to see a little bit of Lan and Steppen, his relationship between him and Karini. Um, and they try to demonstrate like this bond a little bit, how it's not quite as same as a friendship. Um, so we do get a little bit, just a little tad bit of Tinker stuff. Not too much. It's just kind of establishing that Perrin is still on the road with Aram and the gang. And then, because we do get just a couple little tidbits between the other folks, this episode mostly focuses on um, the Logain conflict here.
Mm.
So one of the things I really liked, um, we get a scene between Nynaeve and Leandrin, and Leandrin is such a weird two-faced character where you kind of don't know what her thoughts are or what she's doing. She's definitely tries to manipulate people. I think
Mm-hmm.
as we see in episode 4 and 5,
Yeah, in both.
she's
Yeah.
not very principled, and she likes to break the rules. In this case, the rules that they want to break, and is somewhat pragmatic, to be honest, is that, hey, we should just gentle this guy here and now.
Even
And
without the
Karini,
authority of
yeah,
the sitters.
and Karini is like, no, we got to follow everything by the book.
Mm.
I think Leandrin knows that this guy's a ticking time bomb, so that,
She's
and
just a red
we
as
see
well.
that she does, even when she doesn't need to.
Mm.
We've seen her gentle somebody in the field without taking him back. If you take
We
a look at the first
assume
episode,
that's
yeah.
what happened. All
Well,
we
we
hear is him
assume,
screaming.
yeah, we do assume, but I
Yeah,
think she was gentling him.
safe. You could suggest that's a safe bet, but it might have just been that they're shielding him and then taking him in. But we don't know. But yes, it's. I think for the purpose of the show, I think that's exactly what they were implying.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we know the Reds
Yeah.
play fast and loose. I think that's what they're trying to establish here, especially with
Mm.
Logain, because there's some other stuff. There's definitely some big conflicts between the Reds and Logain later on in the series. I think they're trying to establish that. Um, so yeah, they do talk about. Well, that's one of the conflicts they have is should we gentle this guy or should we take him all the way to Tarvalin? And it's going to take a month. You can imagine how draining that trip is going to be, having to shield him with only 3 capable sisters.
And it's going to be
So
slow. They say that it's really, really slowing their progress.
right, because they're going to have to
They can't
rest
travel as
and
far. Yeah.
right. So going back to Nynaeve, it looks like I would call this Leandrin attempting to do some reconnaissance on this new person that's with their group. Like, obviously, it looks like Leandrin is very interested in what Moraine is doing and what she's doing there and who she's bringing along with her. Um, I don't know if a non show watcher would get this, but
Mm.
we would assume that, hey, if she's bringing back this woman with her, maybe she's
Yeah.
a novice or a wilder or something that's going on. So
Yeah.
she's just trying to make some assessments here. But right away, like Nynaeve knows, she's like, this person's a snake, not to be trusted. So I believe that the audience trusts Nynaeve. So when they say that she says that about Leandrin, they kind of are meant to erect these red flags to see what she does later,
Mm.
So the Grinwell farm. What do you want to say about that?
Well, yeah. Again,
Quite a bit different, right?
quite a bit different, yeah. But the point is, if we just take it for what it is in the show, I think it's a little bit weird, like the way they do it. I mean, I get it. But like Rand's way that he just disarms them by going, well, if you did that, you wouldn't be intending to kill us, and if I'm doing this, that shows I'm not intending to kill you. So now you can just trust us. And then they're like, okay then. but but what I say to myself is, hey, I know they're all Taveran, so yeah, that makes sense, because when he
Well,
says,
what's that? Because remember in the book, one of the reasons why these the farmers are so jumpy is because of the influence of the dagger.
yeah,
I don't know if they're going to do that in the show or not. I don't think they are,
well, we can just
unless they're
assume it,
drawn.
but I don't
Yeah.
think they're going to speak right. I don't think they are. Um, but like they're already been a bit coy about explaining what's actually happened in Shadar Logoth. But that's fine, right? The unknown is quite clever, and actually that
Mhm.
helps build up the theories and builds up the fear. But like Rand's Tavernus and just the ability to pull the threads makes me like understand that when he makes little comments like, maybe trust us. And people just do. I'm like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's Tavern. And that helps smooth it over. And I'm sure that's part of why Robert Jordan included the whole idea. But then that isn't the important part, is it? The important part is that they have them working. We get to see that Matt is lazy, but also that Matt is not himself. We get to see that Tom is a wheeler and a dealer, which we already knew, as he gets out
Mm-hmm.
of mucking out the stables as well. But then finally, the interesting thing is the conversation with the little girl and then the killing. So the conversation with the little girl is really nice, I think, because it shows a parallel of Matt's life with his sisters back home, and it
Mm-hmm.
also allows like the little Easter egg of the
Right.
doll being called Brigitte, and she wants to see the world.
Yep.
Love that.
Yep.
Doesn't mean anything to non-fans, but who cares? We were all like, love that. But it still did the objective for everyone else watching, who know that Matt's sisters he's been looking after, and that his parents don't look after them well, and that he's worried about them, and that that's part of what's feeding into his paranoia. And it also, because of the way he kind of freaks out when she turns up for a second,
Mm-hmm.
shows that Matt's really on edge and not really in control. This dagger is not good for him. So even the show watchers can grasp that and realize. So it's not like a big surprise that Matt's getting worse and worse. And I think that's well displayed throughout the episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
And
did you want to just jump to the killing?
well, we can go straight to that. Did you want to talk about the dream shard that Rand was in?
Uh,
Uh, because he had a
he's been in
dream
several
with,
dreams.
yeah,
Is
this
this the one
one
with?
it's the one where he's walking through, it looks like the farm or a village of some sort, and
Mhm.
Perrin is like hacking away at something with a
Oh,
shovel.
I thought he was hammering, like a smith.
Is that a
And then
hammer?
yeah, it's a hammer. He's being a smith, but but when he gets close,
Uh
it's a body that he's banging on, isn't it?
oh, okay. I thought it was a shovel,
Real,
but yeah, looking closely, yeah, okay, it is a hammer.
because he's a smith. Yeah. And but again, in that concept of Perrin being dangerous, but maybe not realizing how dangerous he is. He thinks he's just at work, but he's actually doing something far worse.
I have
Um,
a
and
theory
that's it.
about
Go on.
this dream sequence. I think I don't know if this is going to be right, but I
Doesn't
think
matter. It's
it's
just a theory.
Teleran Riode, and I think
Hmm.
when you see Perrin doing that, it's his manifestation into Teleran Riode, because I don't
Like
think Rand
he's
would
dreaming.
inherently know that about Perrin, about that
Hmm.
conflict. So I think it's possible that when he sees Perrin there, he's actually viewing Perrin's dream,
Hmm.
possibly.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how. And we see what's interesting is that Matt's in the dream, but he completely ignores Rand, and we see him walking off and staring at something. And we get Egwene, and she gets manhandled by the man with the glowing eyes, or the creature with the glowing
Hmm.
eyes, aka
Indeed.
Ishamael, which doesn't have a
Yeah.
casting.
Balsamon.
Yeah, Balsamon.
Both.
Uh, yeah, he wakes up and he's already um, he jets off looking for Matt, and both
Hmm.
Tom is awake already, and they go and they find him, and he's inside the farmhouse staring at something in a corner, and you see bodies just strewn about. They do a close up of Matt's face, and you see like that stuff
Yeah.
um, coalesce into his mouth. And then shortly after, he says, "I see you." He's pointing at a
Oh.
shadow, and you see a Fade's face pop out of that shadow.
Well,
And
that's like in the
immediately,
actual. That's in the actual thing, isn't it? Like that's like back in real life.
yeah, this is back in real life after
Yeah,
Rand has
because we
woken
see all the
up.
dead bodies, right? We see all the dead bodies,
Yeah, so
so that's got to be mentioned.
yeah, he sees the dead bodies. There's dead bodies everywhere. A
And we're all
fade
thinking,
pops out of a
is it
shadow.
Matt? Hang on. First, the thing is, you see those dead bodies. He's looking for Matt. He's worried about Matt. We see them and we're like, oh, did Matt just start killing everybody? Has he gone fully
Yeah,
rogue?
it's
And
very
then we see the fade and we're like,
ambiguous.
whew.
Yeah, very, very ambiguous whether
Mm.
he did it or not. And then we get to see our first scenes of how a fade fights.
Oh, yeah.
This is actually the first fade combat we see. And Tom is
Mhm.
holding his own against the fade, almost as if he has some experience fighting them
Yeah.
here. And the
Shocking.
fade just kind of dips in and out of shadows and just kind of comes out of them. And he catches daggers out of the air, so it's kind of showing that, oh yeah, these fades are really quick and deadly in combat. And we don't see
Yeah, and
anything happen.
they
So
do
what happens? Go ahead.
they do something like also like CGI-ish or something, because it makes the fades like movements kind of like shudder as they go, like almost as if he's going quicker than speed and time can like faster than the eye can follow, which is I thought was it's only shown for like a brief second, but I thought that was a very cool move because the fade are meant to fight like that, like faster almost than the eye can see, and I thought that was a nice little camera trick. I don't know if that would hold up if you were doing a full like 5 minute fight sequence with watching everything, but for that few seconds, it really put across that point. And I also want to mention that even though it
Yeah,
doesn't go down like
yeah,
this in the books, Tom does fight a fade when he loses track of the boys in the books. A fade's chasing him off the
right.
boat, and Tom goes and confronts it so they can get away. So I like the fact that that was a nod I felt to the continuity of the books. That they've met Tom, they have a relationship with him, and he stops helping them only because he's fighting a fade on their behalf. So I thought it was really nice. A nice way to pull the long storyline into a short episode and still get all the right meaty punches in for the character development.
Yeah, they definitely did some condensing of the plot. Like we know the Grimwall farm is part of the books. This fight is part of the books, but it's not in the same location. They just kind of condensed
Yeah.
some things down here. And I'm looking at this Fade fight, and man, that first strike that the Fade does is just like ridiculously fast.
Yes,
Um,
that's the trick I
I'm like,
talk about.
holy, yeah, it's like he's like in his face like immediately with the first strike. So it's they do get separated, but as we see Matt leaving, the girl that he had talked to, but we got to remember too when he first talked to the girl, he snapped at her, and then
Mm.
he realized what he was doing, and he offered her some bread. But
She
now
offered
we
him some
see,
bread and he accepted it.
oh yeah, that's right,
Other,
because
yeah.
yeah,
But he was
that the other way
friendly,
around.
and
Yeah, he
but he was.
knew. Yeah, he was
Mm,
trained to like contain whatever was
mm,
going on with him. We do see that, like he
mm,
snaps and then he comes back.
hmm.
But in this instance, we find he finds the girl dead on the ground, which is pretty heartbreaking. You know that he thinks he might have been the cause of that, or at least we, as a viewer, we're like, "Who did this?" I'm hoping it's not Matt. You know, that would be
Mm,
really disappointing. But then again, we know, well, we don't know for sure if you're not a book reader, but he appears to be under at least the influence of the dagger quite heavily.
mm,
So one thing I want to mention too, before we get into like some more nitty gritty stuff, and I thought
hmm.
this was pretty good conversation between Lan and Nynaeve
Oh, I love
when
it.
they talk. Yeah, this is awesome. What I think the show's doing, they're obviously giving a lot of attention to their relationship and
Mm,
trying to give us a glimpse of what their relationship was like, because we don't get any Lan and Nynaeve POVs in the
No,
first book. So
very
we're
limited.
seeing, yeah, we're seeing them kind of build this relationship and this bond. One of the things that the scene starts off with is, um, it appears that Lan is praying to of doing some type of prayer of some sort, and then Nynaeve sees this, and then she joins in and she speaks the old tongue, and they start to have a conversation about that. Lan knows the old tongue, so he lets her know what she actually said. But one of the things she mentions is that those were the words that were spoken to her when what was it that her parents had left her in a safe place
Yeah,
during some
and
type of tragedy,
but just isn't
during
this
an
where she talks
attack.
about? Isn't this where she talks about how Gwen? So you mean Nynaeve? Talk
Yeah,
about her
Nynaeve
past?
is talking
Yeah,
about what her mom said to her
yeah,
because she was hiding in a cellar. There was like an
yeah.
attack on their village, but she said
Hmm.
this in the old tongue, but she didn't know what it
Yeah,
was.
and he
But she
translates it.
always, yeah, she used that as something she would tell herself when she was scared. Lan translates what that means, and they share
Mm.
a pretty intense moment because I think
Yeah,
if you're a book reader, you're like, okay, there's that what he says also applies to Lan himself.
of course
Um,
it does. And and she's found him doing like a Malkier tradition, right? Like we haven't got
mhm,
fully into who he really was before he became Moraine's warder, but we can see by what he says here that like he's literally doing like a Malkier tradition of the old times. And then she says this something that's incredibly meaningful to her, but she doesn't actually know what it means. And he
mhm,
gives it more. That's like taking someone, I don't know, like an old book that your mother made, like that it's the only thing you have left of her, and she's died, and someone saying, "Oh, by the way, did you know I have another one?" That like is like a companion piece to this, in which she talks about what she felt about her children, and you're in it. You know, it's like that kind
mhm,
of thing. It's taking something that's precious to you, that's valuable, that has emotional resonance, and then just expanding on it without price and without cost. And one of the things that's so cool is that we've got Moraine trying to manipulate her, we've got Leandrin trying to manipulate her, and Lan just is not trying to manipulate her. He's just so honest and straight with her, and it's just really cool to see. Like they've really like, and that's one of the reasons that Lan, like that's why she's sitting at the Warder's fire instead of the Aes Sedai fire. That's one of the reasons that she talks to Lan so much more openly than she does to either Leandrin or Moraine. And Lan just offers this kindness with no strings attached. And it also shows that he speaks the old tongue and fluently.
mhm. So I can tell you what the translation is, and what he says is this is something they would say before going into a losing battle in which they knew they
Mm.
would lose. So what it translates to is, we shall go into the land so our children can always hold us and we'll never be alone.
Mm.
Um, I thought that was pretty intense there.
Mm.
Um, but this kind of quote kind of applies to both of them. You'll see, well,
Mm.
show show watchers will hopefully see why this applies to Lane himself.
I'm sure they
But
will.
yeah, but yeah, they share like a little bit of a moment here. Um, when he tells that back to Nynaeve, it obviously impacts her, just
Yeah.
by because she's a great actor.
Yeah.
she she portrays that how much of a deep impact. And then after he tells her that, um, she smiles, and she's like, she says, she says something like, "I didn't know that you're quite like that, Alan Mandragoran." She says like his
Yeah.
whole name.
Yeah, like, and she says like, "You're not what I thought you were,"
Yeah,
right?
you're not what I thought you were. And she smiles, and they share like a
And
little bit of a moment there.
yeah, I love how when they do this, and I think this is the bit. I remember I'm not watching the show as we speak, but if this is the bit where she says, "You're not what I thought you were," and he's like, "What did you think I was?" Like a two-legged lapdog. He's like, "Wow." And then he says to her, if this is the right scene that I'm thinking of, he's like, "You're exactly what I thought you were, Wisdom, Almera,"
Yes.
and using her full title as well. And then one of the things that's really cool is that she's like, "Well, what's that?" And then just before he answers, if he was going to, that's when they get summoned to the fight. And so he never
Yeah,
answers.
that's
He
when
doesn't
things
tell
break
her.
out.
But I
Mm.
thought that was pretty freaking cool.
Yes. So speaking of the fight, um, we get into that as well. So what happens is you can hear some sounds out in the distance. The camp is rallying around, and
Mm.
we see Logain stirring a little bit too. They cut to
Mm.
Logain. We see him stirring a bit. Because this whole time while Logain was in the cage, um, they had him pretty much contained, but I guess he could sense his army. I don't know what's going on, but
Mm.
they cut to him. So it's like a hornet's nest in the warder camp, and they're kind of assessing what's going on. What do you think of this battle sequence where Logain's followers arrive and they have a little bit of a tussle there? So we get to see Alana do something, right?
Yeah, I'm
Alana does most
fine
of
with
the
the battle
magic
sequence.
during this battle.
Yeah, because the other powerful Aes Sedai are all shielding Logain, aren't they?
Right,
Karini,
they're all
Moraine,
occupied.
and Leandrin are all in that area. So, and I like the fact that they don't. I mean, we do see the other Aes Sedai do bits and pieces, but they're clearly trying not to split our focus too much. They want us to
Hmm.
look at the warders and the Aes Sedai that they've named because they know that we don't have enough interest to be bothered about 15, 25 different people. It's one of the things the show has to do differently from the books in order to keep the audience going. And so I think it's really good. I find it annoying a little bit that Logain was able to break his shield. I find that
Hmm.
a bit what? I don't know about that, mate. Because but it doesn't matter, right? It's useful for the story. But
Hmm.
just from a lore purist point of view, if you are actually shielded, breaking out of being actively shielded by two people who are both powerful and actively holding the shield, it's practically impossible. Um, just saying.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I found that like a little bit annoying that's what I think they should have had only one person holding the shield when he breaks. So we established that it takes two and then there's only one or something like that. But anyway, doesn't matter. It's a tiny nitpick. But when it happened, I was like, that isn't how it would go in myself. Um, but the battle sequence I love. I think one of the things you can see if you look in the behind the scenes stuff is that they used a lot of practical effects. So a lot
Hmm.
of those explosions actually happen, which I think really helps with the reactions and the debris and stuff. Um, I think that was a good choice. I think it lends an authenticity to the clip. We also get to see that all the warders are fairly badass. That like Lan is not just like a crazy exception. That like
Hmm.
they're all fairly good and they're combining with their Aes Sedai. We get to also see how Aes Sedai are like basically an army unto themselves if they start
Right.
feeling that life is threatened.
Before there was one thing I kind of skipped over that I completely forgot about. because I know
Mm,
we've been stuck on like the Aes Sedai and stuff.
yeah.
Um, there's actually some important stuff that happens with Perrin and his discussion about the Way of the Leaf.
Yeah.
If you
It just
wanted to,
establishes it just establishes that Perrin is like, would that work? And it establishes that the Tinkers take the way of the leaf very, very seriously. Like it's not just like we don't like fighting. It's if someone came to kill us, we'd let them. If we couldn't escape, we'd rather let them slit our throats and the throats of our children than fight.
mhm.
And like Perrin's like, nah, that's not a good call. But you can see that there's a part of him that appeals to, but he just finds it massively unrealistic. But she says, because they give her a lot of Rayan's lines, and like she's uh, she is more put forward as the leader. And one of the
Mhm.
things she says is, "Have you ever like picked up a weapon in anger?" And he kind of nods and admits that he has. And she's like, "Ask yourself this." She doesn't ask him answer out loud, but just ask himself, "Is your life better since you did that?" And you can see that utterly silences him. And we're
Mhm.
beginning to see the beginning of Perrin's conflict of the hammer and the axe. That he wants
Mhm.
to just be a normal man who doesn't hurt anybody, who uses his abilities to build and to create and not to destroy. But there's a part of him that feels that's not realistic. And that if he does that, in the end, people will always take advantage of him and take what he loves. But he also
Mhm.
realizes that because of the way, especially what the show's done, that if he gives into this destructive side of himself, that in many ways he may cost himself that future by becoming
Right.
the monster. So yeah,
Yeah, I just want to touch upon that because I know we're talking about now, which pretty much the end of the episode. One
yeah, we
thing I want
are.
to briefly talk about too that we kind of
Well,
didn't do. What do you think of Alana's polyamory?
oh yeah, that's fine by me, especially because it's Alana, right? So
Yeah,
we in the books they
it's a
suggest that
green.
Greens frequently have multiple warders. That's not only because of the Batlaja, but it's also because they frequently sleep with their warders, and because that bond is so close, makes complete sense. And one of the the fact that with multiple warders, like sleeping with just one of them might be odd. And one of the things that the show clearly wants to
There's
do
an
is,
implication in next episode, right?
yeah, there is.
Yeah.
And but I think the show is deliberately looking like 100%. Rafe and the showrunners are deliberately looking for ways to bring multiculturalism and homosexuality and diversity, which was already there. Just to be clear, I'm not saying they're making this stuff up, but they're trying to bring that more forward and to the front because they know that not only is that realistic, but it's very popular. It's extremely popular. So I'm guaranteeing that the polyamory scene, which was done very subtly, it isn't shoved in anyone's face. It's just there. I am guaranteeing that was extremely popular with the people who watched the show, with the
I
vast
have no
majority,
idea.
because
I just thought it
I
was interesting.
well just that if well all you have to do is look at books and shows, anything that's coming out in the last 5 years, and they will all have something that specifically plays on those things, because if they don't, it is immediately pointed out as a weakness. In the current climate of popularity, that is really, really a key point. And if it isn't there, people are asking, when will it be? And so it's the fact that they've done it in a way that is not like, hey, look, the whole episode's about this, but just saying, yep, many people in this show are straight, but some are not. Many people in this show are monogamous, some are not. And I think that is going to go down extremely well with its popularity. Is my
Well,
view.
I think they just had to be very blatant in setting that up with the green because
Yeah.
if they're going to follow these plot points, this
Yep.
becomes extremely important in land's development.
Yep.
And um, so I think they kind of have to hit us over the head a little bit because I know in the book it's very subtle and you can almost
Extremely.
miss it. miss these things
You
because they're
absolutely
not
can.
very explicit.
There
Like
is no
there's
explicit homosexual relationship in the books. None that are explicit. Not even one.
no, there's
There's
just implications, but there's no
yeah, it's
explicit.
there. It's there to be seen. Just
Right.
absolutely, but just it's never clearly, openly stated. And
Yeah.
but yeah, and I think the show is clever to use that. I think it's a like an open goal, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I
For
know. And when you're dealing with a condensed form of media, you're gonna have to use less subtlety. That's just
yep.
what has to be done
But
because there's
also
so much context and things that get cut out because of time, you know.
but also Rafe Judkins is using his medium, right? Like he didn't spend loads of time on it, and he didn't
Hmm.
he didn't show us two guys banging each other in the tent, and he
Oh
didn't
no,
need
I
to.
don't think he'd ever show us that.
No, but he doesn't need to because like
Yeah.
just when they came to the fire, those two men just sitting the way they were sitting, extremely comfortably with each other, but like one guy was literally sitting between the other guy's legs, like you would do with a partner, right? And
Hmm.
it was just very comfortable, very comfortable. And so and when
And then
Alana comes up,
they go off with Alana, and
yeah, and they make
yeah.
like a comment, and it's flirtatious and it's implicating, and but it's the look as well, and you can't do that with a book, but you can with a
Hmm.
show because the actors can just sell it by the way they act, by the touch, by the way they hold hands with Alana as they're moving off in the distance, and the kind of grin that Stepan gives them. He's like, no, there they go, and so we all know. And so she's like, are they? And they're like, yeah, of course they are. And then that's that. And but they use the visual medium to portray a lot of additional information very quickly. And that's great.
Hmm.
That's what you should do. This shouldn't just be a book that got translated into a show. It should take advantage of the fact it's a show. And scenes like that do that.
Hmm. So, jumping back
Yeah, finale.
towards the Logain conflict, Logain bursts out of the cage and stuns the two Aes Sedai who are holding him.
Yep.
In walks Moraine,
And has a
and
chat.
she's like, "We don't have a lot of time here, so let's talk about some things." So I'm wondering how this is playing on. Well, I'm not wondering because I've heard a lot of opinions on non-book readers about this moment, and they're like, "Man, whose side is Moraine on?" Like, we know what's going on. She's basically trying to figure out um, if he qualifies as a
Mm.
dragon. She basically tells him at the end of the conversation that he doesn't. Um,
Well,
and she doesn't.
yes,
There's two
I
things she's doing. She's definitely
mm,
stalling for time because there's no way she could
yes,
take
I
on
agree.
Logain by herself. He's
Not
way
now he's holding the
he's way too
power.
strong. What's that?
When he's holding the power, not when he's already holding the power. If he wasn't already holding the power, there's a chance. If she can slam a shield in, she's pretty dang strong. But yeah, he's holding the power at this point, so there's no way.
Yeah. So they have a conversation about what it means to be the Dragon Reborn,
Hmm.
and or Logain treats the wheel as like a personified entity,
Yes,
and
like
Moraine
has
is like,
feelings and
no, that's
desires,
not how it works.
which is
The
interesting
wheel does
because
not want anything. That's what she tells him.
Which is interesting though, because I totally agree, and that's very thematically appropriate to the Wheel of Time. But one of the interesting things is one of the famous lines that Moraine is known for in the books is the wheel weaves as the wheel wills, which
Mm,
suggests that the wheel does have a will. But
mm.
she often uses it when she's basically saying that's life. And
Yeah.
so it implies
She
it
uses it to
implies
end a conversation that she doesn't want to
yeah.
have.
But it's interesting because she says it in a way that suggests what you just said, that the wheel has no emotion. However, the actual words of it contradict that. Just throwing that out there. But yeah,
Yeah, you know what? I didn't I did not factor that in. Now that I do, I was like, huh, that is interesting.
But contradictions are what we're all about as human beings.
Right. So she stalls for time. The sisters
Yep.
revive,
And
and
they,
we get to see something that I thought I didn't know how they're going to portray this in the show,
yep.
but we get to see everyone do like their Power Ranger stance.
We get to see that they're reliant on hand gestures in the Aes Sedai. They've all been trained to do things this very specific way, and so they do it in that very specific way.
Yeah, so they all come out to form a circle. They link to form a
Oh,
circle,
well, at first they just
and
the three
Leandrin
of them
leads
just
the
run.
circle.
Hang on, they haven't done that yet because the three of them shield him again, and they've got him
Yes.
shielded, and they're holding it with strain. But then he lashes out. Karini blocks to save the other two, and
Oh
dies.
yes, I
And
forgot
this is
about that
important
part.
because we then flash to the battle, and it shows that Stepin knows that she's dead, even though they're nowhere near her. He knows that she's been either killed or heavily wounded, and he says Lagain, and that's why all of the Aes Sedai know to run to Lagain. That's how they know what's going on. We also find out, by the way, the King of Gildan died in that fight.
Did he get killed?
He did. They show him on the floor bleeding and like choking out his last breath. Just it's a minor point, but it's shown. And then they rush back in, and she's like, "I will cut him down," because they're trying to hold him. And the warder goes into full battle rage. So this shows more about the warder bond, right? The warders know when their Aes Sedai is hurt, no matter where they are. He knows exactly where she is to go to her, and then he does the stupid thing.
Yeah. So they're holding him under shield.
Yep.
Stepin comes in a berserker rage. He's basically under the influence of his bond breaking.
Yep.
And he attacks. Like usually, that's what warders do. They get somewhat suicidal and irrational after their Aes Sedai dies.
But
and he goes straight for him.
And then, guys, I have to say this as a Wheel of Time nerd. This scene shouldn't happen. Doesn't make sense. Like axes have no influence on weaves. They ignore weaves. Weaves are not there to the axes. The axes are not there to the weaves. You certainly cannot cut a shield with a metal axe, you donkey.
However, the shield is not a physical barrier, though.
It isn't.
Which is
That's
weird.
What I'm saying. So basically, when he runs in and swings at Lagain, he should just kill him. That is what should have happened. If you're going to have him, so this is. Do you want to hear my headcanon to make it work?
Yes, let's hear your headcanon.
So in my brain, because I know that isn't what's happening in the show. I know they're just changing it, and I'm trying to be okay with it and not. So in my headcanon, he's running to kill him. They're like, no, you're not supposed to kill him. So I think that one of the sisters channels to hold him back. And so because of that, that's why they fail to keep the shield. It's not because the axe cuts through a bit of it. It's that the sisters divert some of their power to stopping him. But I know that's not what the show is showing, ladies and gentlemen. That's just so that Tristram Johnson doesn't have to be angry with the fact that they're having axes affect shields. The point is the axe then explodes under the pressure, and the shrapnel knocks people over. They love this sonic wave business, everyone hitting the ground all the time, which is bizarre. But 2 people are heavily injured. Lan gets a piece right in the throat, and Leandrin takes something in the shoulder. But Lan is dying, like it's cut his carotid.
Right.
And that's the crucial piece.
He's definitely dying.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we got the 3 that were shielding him. One's dead from an attack by Loghain.
Yeah, by his breakout.
There's some debate about that as well, because they're not supposed to be able to see his weaves.
Yeah, it shouldn't have been done that way. Like basically, what should have happened is he should have broken the shield.
He should have picked up a physical.
Collapsed.
Well, either that or he should have. If they wanted to visualize it, he should have actually picked up a physical object and used the power to throw it at her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like, because we know that breaking a shield can hurt the people who are holding it, because Ren Ran does it in a different book. When he breaks the shield on him, some of the people who were holding the shield get like
Burnt.
stilled.
They get
So
stilled.
we know it can. We know that breaking a shield can hurt the people who are holding the shield. But I know they don't have time, do they? They just don't have time. So they just want to show she's sacrificing herself on their behalf. She does so, and then the main thing they want to show is what that does to a warder, which they show very effectively. And then they want Nynaeve to channel for the first time.
Right. So, and she does it a very particular way to Nynaeve, which is they had to create that bond between her and Lan in order to upset her.
Yeah.
I'm glad they were able to do this so early in the show, it seems like. But I was like, really? When I saw this happen on screen? Not as really as in, I can't believe they did this. I was like, really, as in, are you kidding me? Like, wow, that is shocking. I can't believe that they did this to Lan. It's like, holy crap. My reaction was pretty strong. I was like, holy crap, what is going to happen now?
Imagine if they'd killed Lan and just left him dead. We'd have all left the show right there.
Yeah, and then when Nynaeve comes to his aid, I'm thinking, oh, she's probably going to unintentionally heal him in some way, because that's happens off screen with in her past and her backstory. That kind of happens off screen. So instead of doing like a real subtle thing, I was like, oh yeah, she has to be like super mad. So she was super mad, and we see her explosion of power just like wipe over everybody and heal everyone. Moraine's like in complete shock. Like her jaws just completely dropped.
I saw like someone, like, I think it was Daniel Green's reaction. He's like, yeah, they heal everyone. Well, actually, no, there's only 2 people who got injured, because like the others were just knocked over by the blast. The only 2 people who got injured by the axe that we see are Leandrin and Moraine.
Well, Moraine
Moraine has no injury on her. Yeah, I just watched it today.
When she gets hit, doesn't she get hit by like the haft of the axe or something? Like in the gut?
All I'm saying is there's no injury. We see very clearly that there are 2 injuries, one in Leandrin's shoulder, one in Lan's throat, and we see the weaves heal Leandrin's shoulder, and we see the weaves heal Lan's throat.
Yeah, we do see Leandrin react to
not only react. I watched it again today, and you see the energy going into her shoulder. You see the little weaves, if you look for it, actually going into her shoulder.
I remember. I do remember. Yeah.
So it's quite explicit that she's healing Lan, and there's so much healing that a little bit of leftover kind of touches Leandrin. But it's clear that the weave that she goes for is to heal Lan. There's just so much energy. There's an explosion, isn't there, of like weaves.
Yeah.
And I love that, because it shows that she doesn't know what she's doing. Like,
it's like she doesn't know.
Weaving carefully. She's just going, heal!
Ah!
Yeah, it's over 9,000. Anyway, but
she turns into Super Saiyan for like 5 seconds because her hair goes like straight up.
But like one of the things that we know, if we've read the books again, is that she has done this before, just not as dramatically. Like, she's talked about how there was times in the past when, as a wisdom or as a wisdom's apprentice, there was someone who couldn't be saved, and then somehow they lived, and she was using her herbs and stuff, but still things that people who shouldn't have been savable were saved because she could listen to the wind. And so we know that she has used the power in wilder ways, but just hasn't ever fully done it, registered what she's done. And this is the first time that she's used it openly, and the first time she's used it when people who can channel her around and can go, holy crap, we can see your weaves. Now, obviously, they let Logain see the weaves.
Well, they at least let Logain know I, I
Yeah.
guess there's a lot of controversy about him actually seeing the weaves
Yeah. It's
and
true
how
that men,
that's
yeah, because men can know if women are channeling. That's true.
right.
Yeah, fair point.
Um, they can see at least they'll know when a woman's holding the power for sure.
Yeah, it says so.
Uh, so he compliments her,
Well,
and
he makes
he's
a
in awe
statement.
basically.
Yeah, he's like, it's like a bonfire. Like before, Moraine said to him that compared to the Dragon Reborn, he was a flicker to a bonfire, and he describes her
Mhm.
as like a bonfire. Like, it's like,
Yeah, like brighter than the fury of the sun or
something
something
like
like
that.
that.
Yeah,
So he recognizes that Nynaeve has a lot of power, and he kind of makes this realization that, maybe I'm not really the dragon. I don't know. I don't know if that's kind of a conflict that he's having after
yeah.
seeing this occur,
I
but
think it
that
is. I think
creates an
that's what you're
opening.
supposed to think. Yeah, that's what you're supposed to think. I think that's
Yeah,
what the
that creates
writer
an
tried to put
opening,
in.
though, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
And we get to see the Power Ranger hand gestures for the
Yep.
circle.
Yeah, and then the circle. And it's cool that they've established a circle. I expected a circle from the beginning because usually when the women shield, they are doing it in a link, almost always.
Right. It's easier to establish that rather than have a couple,
Yeah.
using their power. Hey, let's take a little bit of power from everybody. Kind of doing a equal distribution here.
Yep. And so when they do that, and by the way, one of the cool things again is X-Ray explains this. If you click on it when they do the link, just like it also explains wards when she says the word ward earlier.
All
It says
right, there's a ward
it's
that
quite
gets tripped for them
yeah, and
to
when they
see
do that
that the
on X-Ray,
Lagoon's army.
it explains what wards do, which is really cool. Really cool. I'm a big fan of the X-Ray information. Really, really, really pleased with it. And so yeah, we see our first circle, and you're right. She does heal Moraine. I just rewatched it, and yeah, Moraine,
Yeah,
Leandrin,
look,
and
like
Lan.
okay, so if you take a look, there's
Yeah, I
like
just
a
saw it.
haft, like in
Yep,
her abdomen.
yep. You're absolutely right.
I knew
So
she got hit by that. I was like, dang. I thought
it's
she
all
got,
three. It's all
yeah.
three. Like a raging sun is what he says, and then they're all healed. But clearly, she was trying to heal Lan. She wasn't trying to heal all of them. She was trying to heal Lan, and it's like the others got
Hmm.
the leftovers because her power was so unrestrained. But it's one of the things that the show is also establishing is that wilders who use their power to do something unintentionally before they get trained often develop special talents. And
Hmm.
like, we hear about some wilders who used it to listen in on conversations, for example, and they have that
Right.
ability. And later on, we might hear about Leandrin, how she used her power a little bit before she
Hmm.
fully understood. I hope we do, because I think that's a
I hope
cool.
so. I hope
Yeah,
so because they're setting
it's an
up
interesting.
Leandrin differently in episode 5.
Yeah, we'll see. But one of the things it's implying is Nynaeve's already a healer, and that's not going to change.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're definitely setting that up as one of her strong suits. And they kind
yep,
of did that from the beginning. She's the
yep.
wisdom. She healed Moraine. That's kind of her thing. Do you want to talk about like the visuals of the gentling on Logain?
Um, yeah, I'm fine with all the visuals. Like the idea of the circle being like, as you say, Power Ranger hand gestures. So like showing that the sisters all feel they have to do things in a very ritualized way. Showing that
Hmm.
Leandrin had control of the weaves and they didn't. All they were doing was fueling her. I thought that visual was good, and the way that he is like literally the power is almost ripped from him. I thought that was pretty cool. I think that is a good demonstration that the power isn't gone. It's just gone from him. You can't actually
Hmm.
stop the power. You can just stop someone from being able to touch it.
Right.
It's interesting that they didn't do it as a barrier, like it's literally ripped from him. So it looked very different from the
Yeah,
show.
you see it coming out, just like
Yeah.
like being ripped out of his body, like
Mm,
taint and all, or corruption
yeah.
and all, if you want to use the show terms.
Yeah. Mm.
So you want to jump into Blood Calls Blood, which is
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
next
We've
episode?
got. Yeah, I promise to be quicker this time.
No problem, man. No problem. So that episode, it starts with a funeral
Yeah,
ceremony.
they're
Um,
establishing that they wear white for funerals. So
yeah,
yeah,
because we never seen a funeral ceremony is never described in the book. So this is something the show wanted to depict.
mm.
In this case, um, they lay the bodies down, and it looks like they had quite a few casualties from this battle here.
Which is
More than
appropriate.
I had
But I,
expected, yeah. And they even bury
yeah,
like their adversaries respectfully.
yeah, yeah,
So they lay the king of Gildan down alongside their allies.
yeah.
So I think this who they're actually burying all that died from the battle. It's not just their allies. They're burying everybody.
Yeah. And if that literally was the entire army, my goodness, it was a little bit lackluster for trying to take out 7 sisters and their warders. You need at least 100
Yeah.
people for that kind of shenanigan. But
Well, I don't
but
know.
you can,
We don't really see exactly what the result of like. Did they
yeah,
flee? Did they stick
yeah.
around? Like,
I'm sure
uh,
if yeah, some of them will have fled. If in any military engagement, it's very very rare that people are killed to the last man. Almost never.
yeah.
It is almost always decided by who flees first. That's like a crucial point of like that's my degree, by the way,
Who
in
flees
university was
first or who dies? Because the
well, who
king of
flees first.
Gildan was killed. You know.
Yeah, but what I mean is that like the king of Gildan dying is probably broke his army,
Yeah.
because that typically occurs, that once in most people who die in battle die once one of the sides is fleeing, because that's when you can just cut people down. Anyway,
Right.
that's just at least in history that's the way it's happened.
Yeah. So going back to the funeral scene, we see
Yep,
somber moment where
yep.
Steppenwolf is holding
Steppenwolf,
his. Every time I say his name, I just want to say Wolf at the end of it. It's like, why'd they have to choose Steppen?
because they're going to take
Um,
the ring back, isn't he? He's going to take the ring back to the tower.
right. So there's a lot of focus on his character
Mm.
in this episode specifically. He
Yep.
lays Karenni down to rest, and right now his main focus is to make sure that ring returns to the White Tower.
Yeah.
That's basically what I think is keeping him alive at this point.
Yep.
That mission.
Just a
So
couple
we.
of things on that.
Mhm.
Just they do it in a wheel shape, which is again reminiscent of the Wheel of Time, and the idea of everyone who's died will live again and cycles. So just symbolism, and that when they lay him in the grave, Carini in the grave, Lan looks at Moraine and they catch each other's eye, clearly thinking, one day this will be us. And
Mhm.
like, who's going to die first? And Lan's thinking, it better be me. And
Mhm.
and that's actually part of their dynamic, and we'll see that explored further in the chapter. So just that look and the visual of the wheel, I thought was useful to mention.
Mhm.
Mm.
So next scene, it's actually 1 month later.
Yeah, which is a good
So
way
we
to
get
say, let's not get boring with 100 days of traveling.
right. So that also says, hey, Steppen has been traveling for over a month. Like, how's this guy holding up? I know it's commented on by Nynaeve, like, hey, this guy's like barely there.
Yeah.
But they're traveling, and boom, we get to see the first sight of Tar Valon, which is kind
Yep.
of like the tower.
Mm.
We see it over the tree line.
Yeah. You get the
Um,
idea it's a long way away, but they can see it because it's so huge.
right. And they're cutting in like shots of Steppen. He's not looking
Hmm.
too great. We get
Nope.
shots now. We get to another scene with Rand and Matt, and they are also in a caravan on the way to the tower,
Mhm.
and they're able to see a different view of the tower.
Yeah.
We also see Matt's denigration. I think there's just like a
Yep.
kid walking by, and he just snaps at him.
Yeah. Hmm.
Rand shows his concern, and then we see Matt. He doesn't look good at all. His face is like all jacked up, and he's kind of like bundling himself up as if he's like freezing or something.
Mm.
But he's not looking good at all. he's just
No.
he looks like he's on death's door. But they actually go and walk to a mountain to see like a better view of the city, and we finally get that panning vista showing Dragon Mount and Tarvalin together. I was like, yeah, you guys did a good job with that. I am totally on board. I know we've seen it in previews and things like that, but the specific shot they showed is not the one from the preview.
Yeah.
It's a further wider shot that shows like the entire island.
Agreed.
And they get into town, and I like the look of it. It's very
Yeah.
lively. It's probably the most bustling um, scene you've seen so far in the show.
Yep.
Definitely depicts like a city that, hey, it looks like everyone is well to do, well off in the city,
Yeah.
and
Multicultural.
a lot of cultures on display. It was really hard for me to track the different cultures on display, but you
Mm.
definitely see like a very wide array of like garb.
And that's the point. It isn't for us to track it. It's to get this idea of, yeah, this place is like London or like New York. You can bump into someone from anywhere here, and that's the main point.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think it achieved that fine.
yeah. So it's like a medieval New York
Yeah.
or a
And
fantasy
one
New York.
and someone said it was like I've heard a couple of criticisms that it was too clean, right? So not realistic. But actually, one of the things is that Tarvalon is meant to be different from other
Hmm.
towns. It is meant to be cleaner than anywhere else. It is like
It's
the
extremely
even
wealthy town.
yeah, and like but even like it is maintained in a way that no other towns are because of the fact it's the seat of the Aes Sedai. And
Hmm.
so, like, I'm okay with it, especially if when they go to different places like Kerhain or Tyr or Ilion or something, that they show that they're not all pristine. I think that would be a nice contrast to
Hmm.
here. And like when they go to the Borderlands, that they show that they're not as fancy, that they're more like
More a
militaristic
little
and
bit more austere, and
yeah, austere is the perfect word. The perfect word. Absolutely, and I think I'm hoping that they'll do that. So I don't have a problem with it being a little bit too nice because actually I think it should be a little bit too nice. It's Tarvalon.
yeah, it's gonna have to be the nicest of all cities depicted for sure. They're
It
gonna have to
should
make
be.
that contrast.
It should be. I agree.
One thing I wanted to ask you, did you notice while they're walking the streets of Tarvalin, um, that did you hear the whistle?
The Padden Fane whistle.
Yes.
Yeah. Only because I think it was you who told me that like the Padden Fane whistle's used a few times. And I'm like, oh, is it? And I'm like, I'm listening for it around now. So whenever I hear it, I'm like, that's a Patton Fane whistle.
Yeah, so if you were really paying attention closely, when they walk into the inn, the camera angles are over the shoulder shot, and that is Fane. You could see him clasping his hands. He like unclasps them and walks away.
Oh,
But
I didn't
he's
act.
watching them like enter the inn,
Okay, I didn't realize that was him, but I heard the music because I was listening for it, and I
listening for
am
that
listening for it
whistle.
every. Well, I listen for every episode now because of what you said back in episode 1 and 2.
So they reach the inn, and then Matt is definitely distraught about what
Yeah,
happened at the
everything.
end.
Hmm.
And Rand tries to do a very good job at assuring Matt that that wasn't him that
Yeah.
caused that. And
Yeah.
I think Rand is right. I don't think they're going to do Matt like that.
No, I
Hopefully
hope not.
not. I'm hoping that that was definitely not Matt. Who
Yeah,
knows? I don't know what the
it,
show's going to do. It's possible,
yeah, that they
but
make that be what the dagger's effect is, but I think it's just establishing that Matt's memory is messed up now, and that is important.
right. That is important because it does get messed up, um,
Yep,
according to the books.
yep, and that's why
Uh,
his memory, right, which is vitally
right.
important. Other things that happen.
All right. So I was excited to see the interior of the White Tower. How excited were you about that?
Oh yeah, very. I didn't know. I thought we were going to get like the tower. The. I thought we might even be seeing the hall of the tower and stuff. I didn't realize how warder centric this episode was going to be. Oh, and by the way, when he comes in, he goes blood and ashes. Point
Right.
for
I
saying
forgot
blood
to
and
say
ashes.
that. Yeah,
I
I
didn't
forgot to
forget.
say
I
that.
love
As soon as Rand enters the gates of the
it's like
city, that's the first thing he
blood and
says.
ashes.
I was
Love
like,
it.
when he said that, I just threw my arm up in the air and said, "Yes, our
Just a lovely
first
nod.
fantasy curse."
And it's great. And we've heard people talk about the light as well, but not like not quite as a curse, but yeah. And I love that. Just nice little nod to the books. Doesn't take away anything from the show for anybody else. Just cool. But
I
yeah,
think
I
Rand is going to be the conduit of fantasy speak because
yeah.
he's the one who initially talked about thank the light, and he's the one here saying blood and
But
ashes. So any of the more like contemporary curses are going to come from the characters that are
Matt.
known to curse, which would be Matt and I know Uno was cast, so we are going to see
Oh,
something from him.
we'll see plenty of swearing from him.
Well,
But
Uno's the master of cursing, so we'll see what happens.
I don't know if he's the master, but he's certainly its biggest sponsor. But but the yeah, mother's milk in a cup. That's all I'm gonna say. But anyway, but the the scene of the White Tower I love. I really like. I mentioned this before. I really like that as they're going and spending so much time with the warders that they choose to show us a part of the tower that we've not really seen. They show us the warders' quarters, and this idea of like statues representing the warders who've defended the Aes Sedai throughout time. Lovely little
Hmm.
touch. And I mean, that's completely in keeping with what you'd expect to see in the tower, like statues and large doors. So yeah, I liked it. I like the set. I like the idea that they're using the show to explore some places we haven't been.
Right. So we get to see a warder's room. Nynaeve has to hang out and kind of hide away as instructed by Moraine. My thing is, okay, she's telling her this so that she doesn't get manipulated by the other sisters.
Yeah.
You know, that and Moraine's quest, at least in the books, is kind of secret.
Yep. But
Um,
it's established here that no one knows what she's doing because she's going to have her conversation with Alana, isn't she? And
right,
basically, Alana establishes some of that politics.
right. So after that scene, we go to Perrin, Egwene, and the Tinkers.
Yep.
They get held up by Valda and his crew,
Ugh.
and the Tinkers
Volda bad.
show a peaceful display of protest,
And thank
and
goodness that doesn't work because that would have been cheesy.
yeah, it doesn't. So what happens is Valda pimp slaps Isla and
Yeah.
draws blood, and then all the rest of the warders start pimp slapping people.
Warders,
While
just to be clear, he
oh, I'm
meant
sorry, not
white
warders,
cloaks.
the white cloaks.
They're not the same. And
Yeah,
they don't just
no.
pimp slap them, they beat them down. They without weapons break their line. That's what they do. Like they clearly just go in there and start smacking them down. They just don't
But there's
use
a lot of
weapons on them.
smacking. Like I did notice like a lot of open hand slapping happening.
I'm just saying they go in and you
Well,
see
it's
their
like
whole
they
arm.
respect them enough not to use like weapons on them.
They're not gonna kill them. And Aram says that, like, when they're running away, he's like, we can't leave them. And Aram's like, they won't kill Tuathan. Even White Cloaks won't kill Tuathan. So it shows that because everyone knows that the Tuathan are completely peaceful, that it's kind of worked for them, that people don't want to engage with that. And I've got to say, there's an element of that in real life, that people find it very difficult to just, I mean, you have to be stone cold to just kill
Mhm.
people who just literally will not fight back. It's very difficult to fight against someone who will not give you even a little bit of resistance or run away from
Mhm.
you. They're the things. If someone runs away, it's like, oh, I'm on the hunt. And if someone fights back, it's anger to anger, fight to fight. But if someone just literally just stands there serenely and takes it, it's very difficult for people to keep their aggression high. And that's
Mhm.
something I've literally witnessed in my own life. I've had someone attack me, and because I refused to engage at any level as a teenager, he just ran out of steam. He needed something to keep it going. And
Oh, you went
when
on to full turtle bear mode?
No, not even. I just let I literally just let the guy hit me. And
Well, isn't that what
teenagers,
turtle bear is? That's turtle bear
well,
from.
turtle bear is defending yourself, right? Where you go like you turtle up, and you're just going to like curl up and say you can't. You know, if you're a what you call it, the light bringer, then you go full green golem. But anyway, it's just interesting that people need aggression to feed aggression. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
So it isn't
Um.
completely unrealistic that they've developed that over time. There are people who are stone cold, and I'm talking about people who are not connected to emotion at all. And there are people
Mhm.
who, like that, can just murder people, and that's one of the reasons that those people are so dangerous.
Right.
But it's suggesting that they're not like that, the White Cloaks. That they need to think what they're doing is right. They need to believe in their own twisted way that they are justified.
Mhm.
And so they go kill
So,
Tuathan.
yeah, and it seems like they have experience with this as well. Like the Tuatha probably had stood up against White Cloaks before and had
I'm
like a
sure.
similar reaction.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes me think the White Cloaks may have hid like wilders and stuff that were on the run. Like that's kind of
Mm.
what they might have and what they're kind of alluding to. They kind of allude to that
Mm.
as well, that it's common for people from different walks of life just to join up with them if they're having some type of troubles. You
Yeah, and they
know,
take in anyone, even people who are not liked by other people, as long as they will abide by their rules.
right,
Like as long as you're not horrible and harsh, you're welcome amongst them.
right. So, and they at this point they consider Perrin and Egwene family, like
Yeah.
part of them.
Yeah,
So
and
they
they do
get,
that easily.
yeah, without, it's like they welcome them right from the start. Right when
Mm.
we see them in the second episode, or was
Mm.
it the third episode? I think it was the second.
The second one is Shadow Logoth.
Yeah,
So it
so
must
it
be
must
the
have been the
third.
third because they escape at the end. So, yeah, we see them right away. They get adopted without any compunctions. They just tell
Mm-hmm.
them, "Hey, this is what we're all about, and you're welcome to eat with us." You know.
Mm.
Um, so at one point, Aram, Egwene, Perrin, they run off into the woods and they get cut off by three white cloaks on horseback. I
Yep.
believe one of
Yep.
them runs Aram down and he gets knocked out by the
Yep.
collision with the horse. And we just see the white cloaks circling Egwene
Mhm.
and Perrin.
Yeah, and they
That's
take
kind
them.
of where they're left off. Here comes a scene that I really enjoyed. Uh,
The
if
Ogier.
Andrew was here, me and Andrew have different opinions about this scene. I thought his appearance was fine. I wasn't upset about like the little. I wasn't nitpicky about his appearance. And when I say nitpicky, um, like it didn't shock me that he had like the ridiculously long eyebrows or the super long ears with tufts of fur. Like that didn't bother me that those things were absent.
Yeah.
Didn't bother me that he was like nine. He wasn't 9 foot tall.
Well,
They're
he's still
trying their best here.
yeah, but they didn't want to CGI him too much, I
Yeah, at
think,
all. They didn't want
and
to do it at
so
all. He's
he's
not
just a big
CGI'd at
guy.
all. Yeah.
So he's just a big guy. Now the thing is, in some ways, that will help this character stand up to the test of time if
Hmm.
he's just a big guy, because it means that they've been able to use almost entirely practical effects. Um, Whereas if you want to start attaching long ears with tufts of hair and stuff, that means I mean, we're talking hours and hours of additional time every single day
And
doing
we're
that.
also talking about that the payoff might just make him look goofy.
Yeah.
Um,
It is a shame in a way because, like, things like the eyebrows are like a deal, but they do at least give him big eyebrows. He does have big ears and he is bigger than the others. And they change his
yeah.
skin so it's clear he's not human. And that's the key point. So I
Yeah, I
can
think they
forgive,
gave him a fro so that
yeah,
he appears bigger as well, just with that
yeah,
height of hair that he has.
agreed.
Is that
And
yeah?
camera
Because if he
trick
had
as
like
well.
the flat hairstyle that's kind of depicted in a lot of like fan art and other depictions of
Yeah,
Loyal, his hair adds 0 to his height. But I think they used that fro to add some height to him, because it's at
yeah,
least a good 3 or 4 inches of height added to the character,
yeah.
if not
And
5 inches.
it's a shame that he can't be bigger because, one of the things is about the OEA is that they're ogres, right? Or that they're like the
They're
Wheel of
like the
Time
size of
version.
a Trolloc.
Yeah, they're meant to be big, and it is a shame a little bit because, but I don't think it's going to affect the series very much because Loyal's character isn't really about his combat prowess or about
Hmm.
his size, though that does come into when they talk about him putting a long handle on his axe. But the Ogier, they can still achieve everything Loyal needs to do, and really the only real OE character we're going to get any sort of time with is Loyal. And I was really a little bit disappointed because I don't know if you know this, I'm a fan fiction writer as well. And I wrote
Hmm.
a fan fiction called Traveling to Tarmangaiden, which was my version of the end when we didn't know there was going to necessarily be an end because people
Hmm.
were dying and stuff. And so I did my own
Right.
version of the end before it was written. And in my version, one of the things that I wanted to see happen was like I wanted to see them. They want to make this decision: should we stay in the setting or should we be bothered with the world of men? And them
Hmm.
deciding that, and then the song of them being the song that the Tuathan are looking for, and then having them and the
Mm.
Tuathan together fighting in the last battle. The Tuathan by her song, and the Ogier by returning to their axes. But anyway, doesn't occur. So actually, is it really vital that the Ogier be 9 feet tall? Not
No,
really.
like it's not going to
Not
affect the story.
No, because what all the things that Loyal does that are vital for the story are almost all his knowledge, his philosophy, his approach to life.
Hmm.
And all of that we can do with this actor. Something the actor does very well is he plays Loyal, right? The way
Yeah, like the
he talks,
acting I thought was great. I thought it was funny. Like the
spot
funniness
on.
from Loyal is I ramble on about history and we have these hasty humans. He can't be bothered with sitting and listening to the tale that he's trying to say. We we do see that in basically every scene, but this first scene is where we really kind of cement Rand's heritage,
Hmm.
and
Yes,
uh, and
because
then
Loyal
Loyal's
assumes he's an alien.
yeah, right away, and he does mention the hair color. So they're trying
And
to beat this into the audience at this moment.
yeah, and also answer criticism as well, right? Because one of the things he says is it's one of the very few traits of humans that can actually establish an area or culture in this entire world. Like
So that's
so
gonna tell us that all the Aiels are gonna have red hair.
Yeah, or red and blonde kind of hair, like that sort of
Hmm.
Viking look. But it's also neatly, without necessarily having to do so. Rafe has also answered a lot of his critics about multiracial everywhere. What he's
Hmm.
established is it is multiracial everywhere. In this particular world, people have grown together, and multiracial thing is pretty much in every land. But the Aiel, because they've been in the waste and only breeding with themselves, have actually maintained quite a separate biology, and so
Hmm.
and that's useful. So then they can still do the Rand thing, and they can still do the Aiel as a separate people. Very clever,
Right.
very clever. So my hats off to Rafe Judkins. He got himself out of some trouble there, answered some critics, and did it without making a big deal of it. Very nice.
Yeah. So the Aiel is going to be like our homogenous culture of the
Yes,
series,
it looks like
which
it.
makes sense, because
It does.
they're closed off. They're very hostile to outsiders,
Mm.
like extremely
Geographically,
hostile to the outsiders. Even
yeah.
I think the only ones they let in are what, merchants,
The Tuathan,
Tuatha merchants, and
yeah.
they keep an arm more than an arm's length from Tuatha, and
Yeah, but they're allowed in the waste without any. They're never hostile to them.
right.
Never.
So yeah, I do. I like that's occurring, and it does make sense that it took them a month to travel to Tarvalin, but they could travel to Tarvalin on foot.
Yep.
So it's not like these different Randland cultures on the west side of the dragon's spine don't have a lot of intercommunication. I know a lot of war refugees move around as well, and a lot of these city states are always fighting and having
Yep.
wars themselves. So it's imaginable that there could be a lot of intermingling in the wetlands.
100%.
All right,
It
so
works.
back to Loyal.
Books and
Loyal.
ailment and I love it when he's like, "I'm not an ailment." He's like, "Oh, an ailment who denies he's an ailment." He doesn't like accept what Ren says. He just loves his books, and he talks. Just the way he talks is very loyal as well. Like his cadence of words, the way he pauses as he says his sentences, and he has a. I loved it. Loved it.
All right, and I think because you might not catch this, but in this conversation, Rand does tell Loyal that I'm meeting somebody. Because this kind of plays into the next scene that Loyal comes in, which
Yep.
is I found somebody you're looking for.
Yep.
Because you described, and it's not the same person that
And
he
I think he
described.
described it when.
Braid. He said because the thing that Loyal latched onto was the braid, and we know that Loyal is very knowledgeable about the lands. He knows the traditions of the two rivers. So that's what he looked for, and he found Nynaeve with the braids. But that isn't exactly who Rand was looking for. He didn't even know Nynaeve was alive,
Nope.
right?
Which is
Because
perfect.
they got separated. So it's like, oh, I'm shocked. Look, it's Nynaeve. Anyway, I loved Loyal's sausage hands. Those were great. What'd you think about those hands?
Love him, love him. I think they make him look bigger. I think they make him look more not
I was
human.
like, how did they
More,
do those sausage hands? It's like, how does he hold stuff? That's crazy. It's like, how do I
yeah.
get sausage hands like
But
that?
but they do talk about that in the book. That like I think the very first time he sees him in oh my goodness, I've even forgotten what that town's called now. My mind's just gone blank. The city they go to before Camlin. But anyway, it says that he's
Uh,
holding a small book.
It's either Barrelon or Whitebridge
Barrelon.
or
No, it's Barrelon.
okay.
And he has a little book in his hand, and he's got like this massive finger, and he like puts a finger in the page and like holds the entire book open because his fingers are so massive compared to the tiny book he's reading. I love that. So yep, I know I'm a big fan of it. I could his appearance have been better? Like yes, like I was not expecting an afro. I was expecting him to be bigger in physical size. I was expecting ears, especially because we know their compliments are often about eyebrows and ears and things like that. But are those things anywhere near as necessary as him acting like Loyal? No. That's the most
Mm,
important thing. And this actor, his voice, his tone, his cadence, his mannerisms were brilliant. They were excellent. And if I have to choose one or the other, they chose the right one.
right. I'll say this: I've known about Loyal's appearance since at least episode 3.
Mm-hmm.
So that means episode 1 through 3. There was a photo that leaked, and I actually
Mm-hmm.
used it as my thumbnail for our first sessions. So
Aha.
I was I knew he was going to have an afro and a beard. I just didn't know how big he was going to be on screen. I
Yeah.
didn't know about the hands either. So Rand is being hasty. He hears commotion outside, and like, oh, they're doing the procession of. So this procession is something that in the books occurred in Camelin. They moved this over to Tarvalin instead.
Yeah, absolutely. Just completely avoided Berylon and Camlin and Whitebridge, which is good because it just made everything go quicker.
It's fine. Imagine them having to make 3 more city sets and
No
all
way.
that. That's
It
pretty
doesn't make
expensive.
sense. And for not much
So,
added, right?
yeah, it's just say, oh yeah, these guys are traveling to this place, and they stop here briefly. But
And
we have the characters. I'm assuming we may see some Basil Gill, because I know
I
Basil Gill was casted.
I I I think if I was them, I would keep all my Camlin people for Camlin, and it. One of the reasons I think that they delayed to like, why not have Elaine and Min in this season straight away? And I think the reason is because they pop up in the books for like a couple of pages and then they're gone. And yet but you can't cast nobodies as these people because they're going to be huge characters who are going to have hundreds of lines and dozens of scenes. So they need people who are prepared to commit to the show hardcore and who are going to
Hmm.
give years of their life to it. So they can't just go and get someone for like a couple of scenes. But if I get someone and pay them to be here for the long haul, and then I only get them for a couple of scenes, like, it's not good economy. So I think that's why they delayed the introduction of Elaine, the introduction of Min, so that they can
Hmm.
introduce them when they're going to be in the show more straight after. And
Yeah.
I think that's just a pragmatic approach.
Well, the reason I thought there might be a possible introduction of Basil Gill is because as they're approaching the inn, Rand's all, oh, we need to get cleaned up. And
Tom knows this guy.
Tom knows a guy. And I was like, ah, that's Basil Gill. I wonder if they're going to show him or not. Because that initial inn they go to is not the Basil Gill Inn.
No, because that would be in
So,
Camlin.
yeah, so maybe they're like kind of alluding that maybe they're going to meet Basil Gill soon or something. Oh, yeah, I
Good
don't know why
point.
it was mentioned though. So I was like, are they going to put Basil Gills in Camelin, or are they going to put in Varvalin? What's going to happen? So
Mm.
we'll have to see what happens. I'm assuming Camelin makes an appearance in season 2 at least.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking season
Uh,
2.
okay, so the procession quickly. They
By the way,
definitely throw some doubts amongst the
yeah,
non-book
yeah,
readers here.
yeah, absolutely.
They throw something in there where Matt is looking over the procession from a second-story balcony. Rand
Hmm.
joins him. It appears. Well, I'll say this: Logain looks in their direction.
Yeah,
I
but it
don't
looks like
know
it's at
who
Matt.
exactly which one they're looking at.
Yeah, but the camera tries to make you think it's Matt because he looks up and then Matt looks back. It shows a picture of Matt and it shows a picture of Legane and then the laughter. And so
Yes.
it's clearly implying that he locked eyes with Matt.
But what I think it is Logain can see Taviran.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't know if that power is that. Yeah, the Taviran power is
That is
linked
a
to the one
talent.
power.
No,
Is it?
you can see
Can
there
he
are some
use it
people
without being able to channel or
there
being gentled?
there are some people who can see Taverin in the series. That is established, but
Okay.
it's a weird ability to know
Okay.
some. But
I think it's that ability on display.
okay. I just think he's gone insane.
You think he's
uh,
gone insane? You don't think he's
I,
looking at him and say, "Oh, there's Taviran." Like,
no, I think it's the gentling has just affected him. But
okay.
your answer is cooler.
My answer's cooler. That he's seeing the Taviran because he has the
Yeah.
Taviran sight, doesn't he? Doesn't
I
Logain have Taviran sight?
I don't believe that's established in the books, but he might have in the show.
I thought he did. I
Well,
might be
maybe
mistaken.
it's been a while since I read it, so it's entirely possible that I don't remember perfectly. But anyway,
Well,
we should
anyway, yeah,
continue.
we get that little thing. Also, there's a quick shot of Podon Fane like chilling in a little alcove.
I did not see Padam Fane. I just missed it.
Yeah,
So I've watched it
he's
twice now.
there.
Well done. Well done for spotting that, those of you who did. I certainly did not.
All right, so yeah, they're coming through town and yada yada yada, talking about the dragon. They're throwing fruit at
Yeah, yeah,
Logain. So next scene, we get the start of the whole reason why Steppen is um, well, how Steppen was able to keep himself alive. He gave himself a purpose, and his purpose was to return the ring to the White
yeah.
Tower. So we get to see
The
this
nice
little
little,
ritual.
yeah, little ceremony. Yeah, I quite like that. And again, the idea of a ring. So you melt the gold in, and presumably from the gold of the old Aes Sedai rings, new rings are forged and all that jazz.
Hmm
Nice and slick.
So, yeah, I like that we get to see a little bit of White Tower culture. They are expanding upon this stuff, and I think it's really cool that they are doing that. So we get to see him melt the ring, and then right after that ceremony, like we go and cut into the capture of Perrin and Elaine. They scrub her down quite harshly, drape her in white, and they're not treating Perrin particularly well. They have him restrained in a hunched over position, which looks very uncomfortable. And Volda
Yeah.
explains that he's like, I know you can channel, and you need to
Well,
show me this. And
he
he
thinks
makes a
she can.
bargain. Well, he
He's
thinks she could channel.
like she
I
was
don't know
hanging
how he
around with.
came to that conclusion specifically, but I guess he's been on a
Yeah.
questioning binge, and he probably got that information in some
Well,
form or fashion.
I think he suspected Moraine could, right? And tried to catch her in her words, but she
Hmm
outfoxed him. But obviously, he knew they were with Moraine, so now he sees them
Either
on the
that,
road.
or he had stopped in the Two Rivers and he got some of his questions answered.
Possibly,
Yeah, because
possibly.
possibly, I don't know. They don't really say, but apparently he knows that something is fishy going on with Egwene, and he suspects her
Yeah.
of being a channeler of some sort.
But it
And
also makes
he
it clear about some of he said that he doesn't care anyway. Like he's quite willing to to torture someone who may not be a channeler. Like he makes it clear
right,
that he's actually not. He's not restrained even by his own rules.
yeah, and he uses Perrin as a tool to coerce Egwene to confess.
Yeah.
So it doesn't torture her directly, but she tortures
It's
Perrin right in front of her with by cutting him in the
yeah.
back with a knife.
And he shows that he understands quite a lot about channeling. A couple of things is he mentions that he understands what the oaths are. like that
Mm-hmm.
he knows an Aes Sedai can't straight out lie. So when she says like I'm not an Aes Sedai, he's like, well, by saying that you've proved that you're not, because if
Mm-hmm.
you were one, you couldn't lie about it.
Right.
So showing that he kind of knows that maybe she's a wilder, or that's what he thinks. And secondly, another thing that interestingly shows he knows about the power is that they need to use hand gestures, but they don't really need to, or at least it's rumored that
Right.
they don't need to. And so it's interesting. That shows that he's very well read. And if you were an Aes Sedai hunter, that makes sense, right?
Yeah. Right. Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So next scene, we get Steppen getting some drugs from the local drug dealer, which is
It's a bit
naive.
harsh. It's
Well,
a bit harsh.
it's kind of what the feeling is like.
Yeah, he knows that she's a herbalist, because obviously, remember, she's been sat at the fires every day for a month now.
Right,
So
yeah,
he
she's
knows.
pretty friendly with all the warders, and they establish that Nynaeve is close to these warders. She's
And
friends. They are definitely
yeah,
friends at this point.
and he's thinking if he asks a sister, the sisters are more likely to be suspicious because they know what warders are thinking about when they lose their Aes Sedai, whereas he knows
Right.
Nynaeve is much more likely to be naive about it. And
Mhm.
and she is a bit naive because she goes to give him it, and he's like, "Oh yeah, like I'm never free of the pain except like just before I go to sleep, I kind of let go of it." And she's like, "Oh good." He's like, "No, but I don't want to let go of it." And then she's like, "Oh," and then he's like, "Give me something to sleep," when he's just said he doesn't want to go to sleep, and that is like, aha, this,
Mm.
something here doesn't make
He
sense.
doesn't want the pain to go away.
And he says it kind of does when he sleeps, and then he
Mhm.
asks you for a sleeping draft. And that was the first thing that set off warning bells in my head, that contradiction
Mm.
right there.
So yeah, she gives him the stuff on the
Yep.
DL,
Yep.
and we go back to we get as she's walking the halls. It seems that Leandrin starts a conversation with her, seemingly to try to recruit her to the Reds.
Yeah. Well, and we've seen Leandrin trying already, like in the previous episode, but now Leandrin knows that she's
She's
super
pressing it
powerful.
hard. Yeah, she's
Yeah,
pressing
because
it
now she
hard
knows,
now.
and that she's super powerful. So it makes complete sense that she would do so.
Yeah, so and it looks like Nynaeve still thinks she's a snake. At least she's showing that type of emotion on her face that Leandrin's not really someone to be trusted. And then at the end of the conversation, she says, "Hey, what are you doing cooped up here? Why don't you go to the garden and check out the library?" Which is like, what are her motives here? You think?
Making her get used to defying Moraine. That's the key point, I think.
Mm,
There's something we didn't mention about the Valda scene that I think is worth a brief mention.
sure.
Symbolically, is the forced cleaning of Egwene is
Mm-hmm.
that's a deliberately uncomfortable scene
Right.
to make people hate Valda, and I think it's very successful in that. The whole sort of fake, you're dirty and I'm going to make you clean, but also maybe something that not as many people may have noticed is something that happened in the books has not happened in this till now, which is they unbraid her hair.
Oh, I didn't notice that. You know what?
And
That's actually very good
because
observation.
in the books, when they're traveling together, Egwene unbraids her hair and it's more like Moraine. And Nynaeve like comments on it, and so does like Rand. He's like, "You couldn't wait to braid your hair. Now we've been with this woman
Mm-hmm.
like a week, and you're unbraiding your hair. Like you're ready to throw away all your heritage." And they kind of did that a little bit with Rand spat with her, but
Mm-hmm.
we knew that she had to unbraid her hair. That had to happen
At
because
some
it's
point, yeah.
symbolic of the fact that Egwene has moved on from being the wisdom's apprentice, and she's got
Mm.
a bigger destiny, and she wants to embrace the outside world. And it's Nynaeve who will be like, always looking to those two river woolens, right? Tugging on the
Right.
braid, always kind of wishing they were
Oh,
back in
we got a
MSVO.
braid tug this episode, I think, as well.
We did. But what I'm saying is, I just think that they didn't make a huge deal of it. But I'm hoping, I'm really hoping that when Egwene and Nynaeve meet back up, that there's at
Mhm.
least a conversation where Nynaeve's like, or Rand or someone says, "Hey, your hair's not braided. Like, why aren't you rebraiding your hair?" And she basically goes, "I don't feel I need to. Like, that's not me
We're not
anymore.
in the
Now
two
I'm,
rivers anymore.
yeah, yep. And this is who I am now. I'm this woman who's channeler and is out to see the world. I'm not the innkeeper's daughter who was going to be the wisdom's apprentice." And I think that will be the kind of drawing a line under the, no, I'm not going to get back together with Rand. No, I'm not going to become Nynaeve's apprentice. It's all, I'm not looking to avoid being an Aes Sedai. I'm actually, that's what I want.
Right.
And I'm hoping that conversation still happens, because this was a very subtle way of doing it, as they cleanse her and comb out her hair, against her will, by the way. But
Mhm.
it kind of shows that she's been wrenched out of her home against her will. But in the end, Egwene is strong and will make the best of whatever is thrown at her. And you see how she does that in this scene. Anyway, I just thought that was worth mentioning.
All right. So next pivotal scene we briefly touched.
Yep.
We have Matt in bed. He's doing worse,
Yep.
and Rand is attending him. Loyal walks through the door. As of
Guess
course,
who
he
I
doesn't get
found?
directly to the point. He's like, "Yeah, did you know that the gardens are accessible to everybody?" And so, he takes a really long time to get to a point, which is loyal in general. So he surprises Rand not with Egwene, but with Nynaeve.
Who's the person
So
he needed this time?
yeah, and this is like completely shocking because they thought she was dead, and she's not. Um,
Surprise!
so surprise, surprise. When she goes to check on Matt, he like completely snaps at her.
Yeah.
Um, but
Don't
he
touch him.
comes back to himself. Yeah. Uh, so after that, I'm sorry, Rand has a discussion with Nynaeve.
Uh,
It looks
I
like
really
out
like
in the
that scene.
hall.
I
Yeah, you could
really like that
describe
scene. I like
about
their.
what happens.
No,
Yeah,
no,
tell us what happens.
like. What did you think?
Tell
It's like,
us.
so one of the things they talk about is I can hear, and he talks about them being away and that he's worried about Egwene, and obviously that makes sense because remember they were
Mm-hmm.
like basically engaged, and she's like, I'm sure they're alive, and he's like, yeah, like just looks away as if like you can't know that, and she can't know that, and then she tells a story about when Egwene was little and like she had the bone breaker illness,
Mm-hmm.
and basically Nynaeve's old master couldn't heal her, and yet
Mm-hmm.
Egwene survived the night and the fever broke. Now, basically, she's sharing that.
we know what really happens.
Yeah, she's sharing that to say basically Egwene's super tough and she will come through everything. So that's why I'm sure she'll live through this and she's going to come up. But actually, we believe, it's actually established in the books that Nynaeve basically healed her through without realizing it. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a because she says I took Egwene's hands, like she mentions it. She was the one holding her, and she was with her. And but obviously she didn't realize she was channeling. They thought this illness couldn't be healed. So it's like a miraculous healing. Oh, how fortunate! But the thing I love about that is it's Nynaeve being the wisdom, right?
Right.
It's
Like
Nynaeve being the wisdom.
comforting, being a comforting person in a hard time, you know. She is
And
the shepherd, and these are her flock.
yeah, and one of the things as well though is like, and it's another thing that's interesting with this particular episode as a storytelling piece, is this episode starts with a funeral, of the Aes Sedai, and so basically the reason Stepin might be feeling the way he is. And in this conversation, she mentions assisted suicide.
Right.
Okay, so like that the Aes Sedai, not the Aes Sedai, the Old Wisdom offered her a tea that would have killed her, but peacefully. And one of the things that Egwene says is she refused the Wisdom's tea, and when she says that, she like smiles as if she clearly approves of you shouldn't just let yourself be killed, even if it's the easy way out. You should fight till the last breath. And
so that is
naive,
basically,
right?
as book readers, that is her true strength. Not that she actually overcame that illness, but that she refused the choice to die peacefully. She wanted to fight to the bitter end.
And the light made a way for her to live through Nynaeve. Yeah?
So powerful stuff.
Yeah, I think so. And you know what else? It reminds me of the way that Aiel look at the world. You know? Fighting and dying and spitting in Sightblinder's eye with my last breath. You know, that kind of stuff. And, I just love it. It's very Malkieri and all that. And, Manatherin, you want to take me? You better come with a flipping sword. I'm not going down without a freaking fight. And that's great. And the women of the Two Rivers are frequently mentioned as just being made of tough stuff.
Right.
And speaking of women
Two
of Two
Rivers, stout Two Rivers people. They're just something else. They're stubborn.
And then we go back and we find that they're dealing with Valda's little trickery of, if you channel, I'll kill you. If you don't channel, I'll kill him. Like, it's the devil's choice or whatever. And basically, she's trying to channel and Perrin sees it. And he's like, no, stop it. He's like, I should die. I deserve to. And he reveals his secret.
Right.
What did you think of that?
I thought they did it well. Like, here's what I'm going to say. Yes, it's different than what us book readers know. But I think it accomplishes the task of establishing his connection to the wolves. This definitely cements it here. We did have the wolves being called and they helped him.
Yep.
We got to see inklings of the golden eyes.
Yeah.
We got to see him become a little bit feral.
Yep.
Which is going to play into his struggles between, violence and his struggle with adapting and adopting it for specific needs, his struggle with being able to suppress some of his baser natures. But it was hilarious, though. As soon as Perrin got loose, wow, did Valda get completely emasculated. He was like, oh no, don't hurt me.
But the thing is, when Perrin stood up, like...
He's a huge guy.
He's a huge guy. And, like, he has yellow eyes now. And, like, that's not normal. And you can see that, like, also, he knows, I've been cutting on this guy while he was helpless. And, like, I've been threatening this girl who I think is maybe going to be his Aes Sedai and he's going to be her warder. Like, he's implied that. All of this stuff. He knows I've been horrible to him and everyone he loves. And now he's loose. He is going to kill me.
Yeah, look at what I just did to him and now he's loose.
Yeah. And so
lights, please don't hurt me.
I think it was
I want to see what he says exactly. What does he say?
It's not that, but it's
what are you?
Yeah.
And then he gets stabbed in the back by Egwene.
Yeah, because, and isn't it funny that she's not the one who's been stabbed? Perrin has. She's not the one who's like built like a flipping brick outhouse. Perrin is. But Perrin, even in his fury, is slow to kill, slow to act. Like, he could go for Valda straight away, and he doesn't. He stands there for a second, struggling with his feelings. Egwene doesn't hesitate. She's like, stabby, stabby.
Yeah, she gets in there right away.
That's so true to their characters, right? Egwene is like, I will freaking take action, buddy. And like when she ran into the Tuathan, she's like, I'm gonna dance and sing, and he's being cautious. When she hears about the Aes Sedai, she's like, I'm gonna learn to channel, whereas Nynaeve's being cautious. When it's like, this guy's gonna try and kill me, I'm gonna freaking stab him. Perrin's being cautious. Like Egwene is a doer, and that gets her in trouble sometimes. But she is a protagonist through and through, and that's, love her or hate her, that's one of her core attributes. She is an I'm gonna like viewing the tea. I'm gonna take control of my own life. You're not deciding for me. I'll decide for myself. And yeah, I love that. I love that about her. I think it's very true to her character. So even though this scene isn't from the books, I think it is true to the character of both Perrin and Egwene. And in the books, they are rescued from the White Cloaks by a wolf attack. So that's nice.
That's right. As I was getting a little bit confused, because I know the wolves do participate in the rescue, but in the books we had Lan and Nynaeve also, and Moraine.
The wolves kind of.
I think it's better. Yeah, I think it's better that they actually gave the sole rescue reason to the wolves, because it kind of. Because I don't think we're gonna get on the Elias.
No,
I just don't know. Yeah,
no, I'm pretty sure that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, so this is kind of what we have here to kind of give us the notion that, okay, Perrin has some connection to these wolves. These wolves are protecting him.
And they've been building that up, haven't they, since episode 3? There's like 3, and then 4, and then 5. So we've seen it coming. And one of the things I really like is in the second torture scene, like not the first time he's dealing with Perrin, but the second time he's dealing with Perrin, you can hear the wolves in the background.
You can hear them,
and I love that. When I heard them, I'm like, oh, they're coming. They're coming. I was like, I actually thought they were going to do the whole rescue. I didn't realize that she was going to finesse the fire and it was cool because it established she can't just channel willy-nilly. It established she can do it without the hand gestures because she isn't yet bound to the ideas that the Aes Sedai are.
And she has a good amount of control.
Well, that she tried something clever. Like she does the little bit that Valda sees, but she also burns the ropes, which he doesn't see. Very slick, Egwene. And one of the things we'll see is because Egwene is not as strong. I mean, she's on the same sort of level as like Moraine, or maybe a little bit higher, but she's nowhere near.
I think she's stronger than Moraine, but she's not as strong as Nynaeve.
Not even close. And but the thing is that she becomes one of the best users of the power. Like she becomes unbelievably good at that, and that's established in later books. And
because I think
already
when she's in Saladar, she's actually the strongest present, minus Nynaeve. Because she's at least as strong as Lelaine and Ramonda, I remember. Who were the ones vying for control over Saladar. So, and I think they picked her because she was strong, so they can. I think that was one of the reasons. It had to be one of the reasons.
She's super strong.
Yeah, they definitely didn't want to give it to Nynaeve because Nynaeve had the block. She had anger issues.
Well, she just couldn't channel.
Yeah, she had full ability. She didn't have a block. Nynaeve still had the block at the time, and you couldn't put an Armelin with a block. That just doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
and they thought they can control Egwene as well, because Nynaeve has a very, very strong personality, and Egwene has a very I think she has the stubbornness, but she doesn't have like the kind of like the outward pushiness that Nynaeve has. Nynaeve was a wisdom, so she's basically has experience in a leadership role, and she knows how to push other people around because she had to, as a wisdom of a very young age. She kind of had to fight a little bit harder in order to be respected by her community, and I think that kind of just like translates into her character, whereas Egwene kind of got brought up a bit differently. She didn't have to quite prove herself in the same ways that Nynaeve had to do so. So
Yeah,
she was a bit
and
more subtle.
we'll see that as we go forward, like with the level of of power and how important that is, because like Egwene and Elaine are seen as like, wow, you're the
They're
most
pretty
powerful thing.
much like equal. I think Elaine
Yeah,
and Egwene are equal in power.
and yeah, Elaine, Egwene, and Avienda are stated as being of a likeness. But
Yeah.
one of the things that's interesting is like when Egwene is first found, like Moraine's going, "This is the most powerful woman we've ever seen," like kind of thing. And
Hmm.
then Nynaeve is immediately established as significantly stronger, and you're just like, oh, like
Yeah.
power
Especially
scaling
when she does
up.
that balefire, like, oh
Yeah,
yeah,
we're
the
not there
forbidden
yet.
reeve that only the most powerful of channelers can do. She just kind of winged it and did it without even knowing what she was doing.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, we should carry on.
Yeah, so back to the scene. I'm just going to play this little clip here. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it, but hold on. So that's Perrin
Yeah,
breaking out,
going
and
nuts.
Valda's like, "Light, protect me." So yeah, he gets stabbed, and they escape, and then they firmly establish, "Oh yeah, the wolf is not going to hurt us." That's what
Yeah.
Perrin says to Egwene when the wolf comes up. So it's
Well, and the
clear
wolf
that
part. So it's like he
yeah, the
can
wolf had a
understand
snarl on his
people,
face. Yeah,
but what I mean is, it's like he can understand the wolf's barking means now, which
or
is
at least the
interesting.
intention. Yeah,
Yeah,
of
yeah,
the
yeah. I'm not
wolf
saying
or
word for
what they're
word.
trying to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like
Okay.
the golden eyes now gave him the ability, and they show a pretty good close up on the wolf's face, and
Yeah,
the wolf has those golden eyes. So I
yeah,
think they're trying to really, really establish, hey, yeah, he's unlocked something in himself here.
yeah. He's let the wolf
So
over it.
there's one interesting scene. I wanted to hear what you thought about this. Um, Leandrin talks to Moraine, and she kind of remarks about, hey, you haven't been here in a while.
Yeah.
And
Eh.
what do you think is going on here? She kind of like caresses Moraine's face. Do you think they're implying that they were like pillow friends at some point, or what
I,
do you
I,
think's going
I, I
on?
think I think it's an attempt to put a little bit of physical dominance. You know, like when some, I don't know, maybe it is. No, it does look like a very gentle gesture, but I think it's a little bit of like how sometimes people try and do that with handshakes. That they try and show a character trying to show dominance through a handshake. I think it's a
Hmm.
little bit like that. Like I'm your mother, you're my kid, which is very much we get a lot of that amongst the Aes Sedai, don't we? As you know, I'm the
Yeah,
one
but
who looks after.
Leandrin's not more powerful than Moraine.
No, but I, just to be clear, Leandrin's playing a role here, isn't she? It doesn't matter. What Leandrin's trying to say is, you're looking worse for wear. You're not looking at your best. You're not as strong as you think you are. And what they talk about is Nynaeve, right? Nynaeve's
Nynaeve,
the
yeah.
game piece. And what this is establishing is that there's reds and blues in rivalry. And because we don't
Mm,
know all of the interpolitics, all we know is Moraine and Leandrin. So they're setting them up as representing the red and the blue. And that Nynaeve is basically a piece in this game and a very important one now. And when Moraine brought her to the tower, instead of doing the normal thing and saying, "Hey, sisters, I've got a new sister," she's hidden her away as if I want to
right.
keep her for myself. I want to try and put her in the warder's quarters where the other sisters won't see her and be able to influence her. So only I
Hmm.
can manipulate. You know, you said protect her from the manipulation of other people. Only I am allowed to do that. And Moraine is like being the manipulator. But Leandrin's going,
Mm,
"Hey, you know what? Nynaeve's not like you, Moraine. She's not going to want to be a blue. She isn't a manipulative little picky pucky. She isn't into
mm,
causes." And she's going, "Yeah, but she's not red."
mm.
And so, and interestingly, they mention the yellows for the first time, which is pretty cool.
Right. They also mentioned the Armelin coming from Camelin.
Yep, and well, that's going to be a big deal, and that's mentioned a lot more in the Alana scene that we're going to get to.
Mhm.
So actually, can we just do all that together? Because that's all the politics together. Then we can do all the stepping
Yeah,
together.
all of that, and then we get to step in. So the next scene, right before we get to the Lana scene, though, something very interesting that I noticed. Stepin is praying to an altar to ward off the Forsaken. How
Yeah,
many Forsaken idols did you count?
I counted 6. Was there
You saw
more?
you saw 6? I thought I counted. I thought there were 8.
No, there might be more. There definitely wasn't less. There might have
Yeah,
been
because
more,
I
but
was like, okay, this is really important. Um, let's see how many there are, and that will tell us how many Forsaken are going to be in the show. So I just took another look at it, and there's definitely
there's
8.
8. Okay.
So that tells us, as a book reader, how many Forsaken are we going to have?
That makes sense.
Hmm.
I was sure there would be 7. Like before it happened, I thought they won't be able to resist the magic number. But yeah, it makes sense that there's not 13. Basically, that makes complete sense.
Yeah, and
But
I think one of the pieces definitely looked like Samael.
yeah, I thought so.
Because
The
we know
bearded guy.
only one of the Forsaken is bearded. So one of those pieces were bearded. So we
Yeah,
definitely are getting some.
I'm.
Well, you can't not have him. Like that would
Well,
be weird.
you could not have him, but I think he's far more important than Baal, and so I
Oh,
think
Bilal is. Yeah, he's not. Yeah, he's like in
they'll
one scene,
put
right?
him and Bilal together because they're both in the south. One's with Ilian and one's with here, so they'll just have someone play both roles.
Yeah, they'll
And
probably
I think they'll have
combine
Ravin.
Agenor. Do you think they're going to combine Agenor and Balthamel?
I do, and I also think that they'll combine. I think Ravin will be there,
Lanfear and
but I
Mogideon,
think
maybe?
no, no. I think Lanfear
You
and
think they're
Mogideon
going to
will
be
be separate
separate?
because I think they're really important female Forsaken because of
Okay,
Mogideon's Mogideon's beef is with Nynaeve, and
right.
Lanfear's beef is with everyone who wants to get in Rand's pants. and, and
And she's kind of
uh,
important to like the end, I guess. The end of the
yeah,
series.
and Mogideon is a sniveler, and Lanfear is like a goddess queen. So
Okay.
I think they fill very different roles. Like Mogideon's sly and tricky and undercut, and Lanfear's like in your face. I will destroy you. You must all adore me in despair. So I think
I think they're going to
they just
probably take out Messana.
yeah. Masana is the one I think is most likely to be disappearing. Semiraj I think they will keep because I think they want to have a Forsaken
The real
amongst the
brutal Forsaken.
and also amongst the other side. What do you call it? The frick the not the ailment. I can't even think of my words anymore. My brain is gone. Tuon's people
Oh, the
from across
Sanchan.
the ocean. The Shanchan. I think Grendel and Masana will become the same person.
Maybe.
Oh,
Yeah,
I think
I could
so.
see that.
Because
Yeah,
they have
I
very
could see that.
similar
Manipulation.
situations, and they're both gorgeous. But I think they will want one of the Forsaken in the tower, and so I think the location of that Aes Sedai will be that Forsaken will be in the tower, but they'll go and do
Hmm.
Grendel stuff as well, and they'll
Hmm.
probably be super hot because they're gonna like that for the show, aren't they? Like the whole
Yeah.
Grendel keeps pets. They're gonna
Yeah, I
want
wonder. Yeah, we're
that
wondering. We're
on
wondering
display.
Yeah, we're gonna wonder who Berlane's gonna be cast. Who are they gonna do for Avienda?
Yeah, but I'm just
Lanfear. We
saying,
don't even have a Lanfear yet.
well, there's no need. Why would you cast her so much before you need her? But we did see our first Waystones, right?
Yeah, we have our first Waystones at least in the trailer.
No. Not Waygate.
Oh yeah, yeah. On the way to
Yep, you saw
the
the stone.
Tarvalin. Yeah, there
Yep,
was the stones with the runes on them.
correct. So
So you think
I'm
you're
just
thinking those are Waystones?
yep, 100%. They're
Okay.
plotting it now. They're plotting it now because in the books they say, "Oh yeah, these things, people know these things. They're like used as landmarks." But actually,
Okay.
they're teleporting.
I'm gonna say
But
that
anyway,
there's definitely. I think there's gonna be a Grand Doll because I think this statue sitting next to Samael might be Grand Doll,
yeah, the
possibly.
giant breasts one.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So getting
That's
past
still,
that.
yeah. It's a cool scene, and like you say, it's helping establish it. But we need to get onto the politics.
Yeah. So the Alana and Moraine. What do you want to say about this scene?
Well, my key points are: I think it was great. I think again it establishes that maybe Maureen had pillow friends because Alana's like lying on her bed while they chat
Mm-hmm.
very comfortably, and we know that Alana already is very open
Mm-hmm.
as a green. And when Moraine kind of suggests things, she's like, "Hey, I could never do with just one water. You know, one person is not enough." But the politics stuff's interesting. One of the things that's really cool here is they establish that the Amerlin seat does not like Moraine. That Moraine is a threat to the Amerlin seat because of her power, even though Moraine's saying,
Mm.
"I." So that's really interesting because that's established in the book, but it's overruled so quickly in the book
Right.
that we almost have no time to understand that actually most people think Moraine is a rebel who Swan barely tolerates.
Yeah, but
Which
that's
is
not the real case, is it?
no, but it's been their cover for years, and it's clear that like she's like, yeah, the boss is coming back, and she's going to be ticked off with you, Moraine. She's going to be looking to punk somebody out, and you know it's going to be you because you know she doesn't like you, and all this. And I thought that was I'd forgotten almost that was a thing, and then this thing just pulled me right back in. I'm like, oh yeah. So film watchers are going to be like, right, she's going to come back, this big boss. She's going to be an enemy. She's going to be an antagonist. And then obviously we're going to see that reversed in private, which is really, really cool. Love that they established that here. Really, really like it. Great move.
One thing I thought was
Secondly, establish.
interesting
Yep, go on, go on, go on.
about this conversation is that
Yep,
Alana mentions to Moraine that Leandrin has designs on obtaining the Armelin seat. So this got me
yeah, on
thinking.
power.
Yeah, I was like, okay,
Is
what's
Leandrin a
gonna
Leda?
happen? Yeah, basically, that's what told me is like, are they combining these characters? It's certainly possible, but dang, I
Yeah,
liked the separateness of one that's totally
yeah,
causing chaos and isn't a dark friend at all, and then you have
yeah,
this one that's explicitly a dark friend and
yeah,
is causing like direct harm um, in other
yeah.
ways. So I was like, well, let's see what happens. We'll see if we get an Elida. If they were going to establish an Elida, they would have had to do it this first season, based off of
Well,
how important that character is, kind of, right?
I don't know. I don't know. I think you introduce a Lida when you introduce a lane, right?
Elaine and Marguerite, and yeah,
Yep.
we'll have to see if we'll have
But
to see what happens.
but I hear what you're saying, and it makes a lot of sense because both of them are involved. Both of them do bad things. Both of them are red. There's lots of reasons why the two of them merging makes sense. As long as they at least use Galena, we need to see at least one or two other important red sisters. I
Hmm.
think, and I
Yeah.
do think it's a shame if if we if we don't get a Leda. I do
Mm.
think it's a shame, but I
Yeah.
can see why they might do it. Anyway, um, the other thing that is established here is that Moraine is seen as influential, even though she is not present. And one of the big
Hmm.
reasons is because she's powerful. Again, establishing
Right.
how important it is to the Aes Sedai. Because you're powerful, you are considered viable for the seat, even though you're not politically astute. But you've been away, and when you've been away, other people have been solidifying their power, and you haven't been.
Hmm.
Um, Anyway, one other thing, by the way, that might back up your point that it could be Leandrin's going to be a Leda is it says the Amelin Seat's coming back from Camlin,
Right.
which is a bit sucky. And if she comes back from Camlin with the daughter heir as a new novice, then that's even worse because that means she definitely will be taking a Leda's role. If the
Right.
Amelin Seat's done a Leda's job for her in Camlin. Let's hope
Yeah,
that's not the
because the
case.
only thing, because we'll see what happens. We got to see how who ferries the girls to
Elaine.
Tomon Head.
Yeah.
We'll just have to see how that breaks down. If they do go the Leandrin becomes a Leda path,
Yeah.
which I don't mind too much. Leandrin.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can kind of do that.
Yeah.
Because really, she is not terribly important after like book 4 or 5.
Correct.
Because she
And then
becomes
she's
like
reintroduced as a peon later on.
yeah,
As a
yeah,
slave.
basically, yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, the final sequence. Lan discovers Stepan has committed suicide.
You didn't mention the secret door, by the way. In
Yeah,
Marine's
what was
room.
that secret door? Like,
No
do you know what
freaking
that
clue.
was?
I'm the only thing I think of is maybe it had her Angreal in it because I expected her to use her Angreal in whatchamacallit in the fight at the Two Rivers because she does in the book, but she never did. The woman in her hair, and then having an Angreal is very, very powerful. So maybe it's that, but it wasn't explicit. She just opens it, and it's really hard to see anything in it. It's like she opens it, she stares at it, and it looks like a picture of a woman staring out of a window. And I wondered if the woman, if that's actually meant to be like a little thing that you can actually pick up, and the woman is the Angreal. But the other thing it made me think of, because above it is like a sunburst, right? And that made me think Kerheim. And so
possibly,
she came from there, because she's nobility
Carry on,
there.
yeah.
And so I wonder if it was like her thinking about what ifs and what could have been. I don't know if it's that, or if it's like a secret place, or if it's like her looking at like a image of an Aes Sedai prophecy, like the lady who made the Katara, correct? Like looking out the window at Dragon Mount kind of thing. I don't know if it's meant to be that, but it was very obscure. It was very, very unexplained. So hopefully someone's going to comment on that at some point.
Yeah, I couldn't really make it heads or tails of that scene at all. Like, to be honest, I just didn't know what was happening, and I couldn't really tell.
It was very mysterious.
Yeah, so I was like, I don't know what's going on here.
So let's do the finale.
Yeah. So did you want to see? Okay, so moving on, we have the suicide. So this is basically this is to show the audience of how strong that bond is, and even how long the effects linger for. Because this is a month later.
Yep.
And he's not doing well, but he completed his task of bringing the ring back, and he drugs Lan. I wasn't expecting this. I guess I just didn't get the clues.
Yeah. I was expecting him to try and kill himself, but I thought that they were then going to use the new warder thing and use that to establish what can be done to save a warder for Lan later.
I thought that's what they were possibly going to do.
Yeah.
I didn't know if they were going to kill him or not. I know in the book canon, like, these characters have been dead for a long time.
Yeah, because they're killed in the because Karini's killed in the vileness. Like she's assassinated by the Black Aja.
Yeah.
In the books, off screen.
Off screen, yeah, part of
before the
the
books even start.
vileness.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess they would have to do him in too, because technically he wouldn't be around in this
No.
period. I just wasn't thinking about that, but
Mm.
it should be kind of obvious that
Actually,
that
yeah.
was going to
Can I
happen.
just say that for me, that's kind of one of the things. Like, Perrin has a wife. I'm like, okay, she's dead. And like Karini's mentioned, I'm like, well, she's dead. Like, but to be fair, I already knew because of the trailer that basically we see a warder crying, so an Aes Sedai has to die. So as soon as they introduced
Hmm.
a character by name that I knew was already dead by book one, I'm like, she's toast. And when the warder survived, I thought he was going to die in the fight with the battle rage, and when he didn't, I'm like, he's dead.
Yeah,
So
I was
these deaths
surprised he
didn't,
survived
didn't.
that. Yeah,
Yes, yes, correct,
but then we
correct.
didn't get the scene where he was like crying over the ring that we saw in the
That's
trailer.
true. That's true. That's true. But I'd forgotten that. I was just thinking, you're dead. You're dead, sucker. You're dead. Anyway, but then
uh,
he drugs Lan to show that Lan, because Lan was obviously with him, partially because he knew this was a danger, right? He's on
mhm,
suicide watch. And
right,
then he uses the tea that I knew he wasn't going to use on himself on Lan. And then that is one of the things that's good about that is it implies that Lan can feel responsible for his death in some way,
right.
um, because he was the one who was on watch, and
Hmm.
that helps me with my biggest problem with the entire episode.
I get that. I have defenses for that
Yeah,
that
me too,
I'll have
but
you
I still
consider.
don't like it. I still don't like it.
You don't like it?
I
I get
don't.
it. Like,
Yeah,
well, the thing that you're having a problem is Lan screaming like in
like
mourning,
he
right?
has a in the funeral scene that is about to happen, and I have no problem with the funeral scene. I think it's good. Do you think, by the way, is that Hama, the guy with the white beard, the like leader of the warders? Do you think that's going to be Hama?
I'm not. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it will be because they've clearly singled him out, and Hama makes the most sense to single out as a senior warder, and it means that then they can have him be the trainer of Galan and Gowan, unless they combine those two into one person, which is entirely possible. And
Hmm.
um, and but anyway, he can be their trainer, and then when they get beaten by Matt, he can make the comment, and he can also be the one that when the youngling's turn is killed, so that we have a warder that we care about who tries to rescue Swan Co. We
Well, he
need
has a speaking line, so let me check the X-ray on that real quick to
yeah,
see if
if it says it's
the
Hama.
X-ray says anything. Let's take
But
a quick look.
I understand the defense of Lan crying. So Lan is obviously feeling responsible after what happened because he was drugged. He was meant to keep his brother alive. He cares deeply. And even though Lan keeps control of his emotions, he still has them. He just controls them. And so
Hmm.
Moraine's feeling his feelings, but she doesn't control them as well. And so she starts crying. And then her
Right.
tears and her emotions overcome him. And so then he starts expressing what he's feeling through the bond from her, which then leads to him expressing more emotion than Lan typically would. But
Yeah,
it's
it's like a
still hard for me to
feedback loop.
accept. It's still hard for me to accept because Lan has seen hundreds of people die. He's been on battlefields surrounded by death. He's lost not only his home and his parents, but almost his entire nation and identity. He is the last of his people, and when he's gone, there will be no more Malkir. And yet,
Well,
he's
here's one
fine.
of my justifications. Now hear me out.
Go
What
on.
is Land's most famous quote?
Like, death is easier. Like, duty is heavy as a mountain, death is light in the feather. That one is what I would go with.
Yeah, so what's his duty in the ceremony?
To mourn,
Right.
yeah.
He's
So he's
doing his
like,
duty. That's
even
what
though
he
it's
has
hard
to
for me,
do.
I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, like he is being tasked to grieve for all those who are present.
Yeah.
And I think that if that is his duty, Lan is
He
going to
would do
do
it.
it. That's
And to the
what
max.
Lan does.
Yeah.
And like I'm looking at that scene right now, and it does look like they try to portray this as a bouncing back of emotions.
Yep. And
Like
I get
Lan,
that.
yeah, Lan looks up at Moraine. Moraine is
Yep.
visibly starting to cry. It
Hmm.
bounces back to him. He's trying to contain this. Obviously,
Yep.
it looks like he's trying to contain it. I really liked the ritual aspect of this funeral.
Yep.
I thought it was a pretty cool way to portray a funeral. I know it's not something that's canon to the books, but I thought it
But
was cool that they expanded on this.
yeah, it's
And,
not contradictory to the books, right? It's
right.
not like there's in the books the way warders mourn, and then they're like, no, did something different. It's just never mentioned, and it
Hmm.
completely lines up with the militaristic feeling of warders and with their deep brotherhood connection to each other, and that kind of thing. So I have no problem with the funeral itself at all, and I think that idea of we're brothers, like military men mourning other military men, and really only we get it because only we understand because we've had the bond, we've been in this situation. So I really I like that. I like that. I even like the striking of themselves, almost like we have all been wounded by this. When one of us falls, it hurts all of us. And yeah, like all the rest of it, I'm fine with. I just I almost wish that his outburst, even if his outburst had just not been so extreme.
The
Like if
screaming, yeah.
Yeah, if he'd like gritted his teeth and then just let out a low moan and a tear had dropped from his eye, I would have like been like, wow, like even a mountain can cry, kind of thing. But yeah, I found it a little much for Lan particularly. However, this is a different turning of the wheel. This Lan is more emotional, and he, even though he has excellent control, he can be overcome, and that's who he is, and that's fine. But yeah, I have to admit, I was like, oh, ugh, and I had to like ignore it.
Yeah. I just, yeah, it was totally unexpected. Well, it's expected because I saw this moment in the trailer,
Mm.
but I used Land's,
Rationalization.
yeah, the rationalization I use is Land puts duty
Mm.
above everything else, and he was
Mm.
tasked by the lead warder to
Mm.
do this for all the warders. And I
Yep.
think he had to do it justice at least. Like he wasn't just bawling, crying. He
No.
was just kind of screaming, like "ah," you know.
Yeah.
So it's
He
a
was not.
different expression,
Yeah.
you
It was
know.
still manly and battle wise. Yeah.
And I thought that, I thought the, I thought it was okay. Like I wasn't
Yeah. It
that put
wasn't
off.
terrible.
Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't terrible, and
No.
it's like, yeah, okay, let's give Daniel Henney some time, something to shine on, you know, because we
Yeah.
know that most likely throughout the rest of the series, we're not going to have a Lan that's going to be anywhere near to this level.
No.
That's what my guess is going to be. That this is the most emotion we're ever going to see out of Lan for the rest of the series.
Well,
So let's just get that out of the way and
let's
then
see.
move on.
Let's see, because Lan's got an arc to go through. Not in this series, but in future series, we're going to see some
Yeah, we're
things.
gonna see some stuff in the next
But
the next seasons for
one of
sure.
the
Especially, you know, after during and after book 5, you know.
correct, exactly what I was thinking. Exactly what I was thinking. But
But I think he's gonna
I've got to
handle
say
it
also that
differently, you know. It's gonna be
yeah,
interesting.
and he smiled. He smiled more than Lan ever smiles, and so but that's good, right? That's good. It's showing that he is not an emotionless wreck. He's just very in control, and I totally
Well,
appreciate
here's
that.
one of the things that people forget about is Lan in the books is not devoid of emotion.
Not at all.
One of the things I point to is, hey, do you remember that one incidents when Nynaeve told him that she was going off to Terabon without him. How did Lan react to that? It wasn't
Not
with
well.
stoicism.
No.
He
And
definitely didn't react to that very well at all. So he can display some things.
yeah.
People just kind of forget that he does have some outbursts every now and then. It's just not
And
very common. Even in the books, he has some outbursts. Like that's the first one I remember. Is Nynaeve is like, "Oh, I'm going to Terabon," and he's, he made a very, very big stink of it and got very emotional. Not emotional as in weepy or anything, but
yeah.
emotional as in instead of being
He was
stoic, he
vehement.
just let himself go a little bit.
And
So there.
he
That's my
argues with
defense.
Moraine.
Lan can get
Yeah,
emotional sometimes.
he can. He can. And he argues with Moraine multiple times as well.
Right.
And in New Spring even more so.
Right.
Um,
I think like Lan's stoicness is mainly centered around when he's in combat, like when he's getting nicked by blades, slapped in the face, zero reaction.
yeah. You've done
That's the
nothing
kind
to
of
me.
but when if it's something to do with Nynaeve and his love interest, that's when we get to see those restraints loosen a bit, and
Yeah.
they definitely happen. It's just people just kind of forget that. Oh yeah, Lan does sometimes get emotional, but we do expect him to keep everything under wraps for some reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, he gets a little bit emotional sometimes.
He's not one-dimensional, and that's good.
Right.
But yes, I would have preferred to see him get a little bit emotional. That's what I would have preferred. But anyway,
Not a lot, like
no, I did not want to see the Trolloc scream. But I have no problem with Daniel Henney's representation of Lan. I think he has done the character full justice. In fact, I have nothing but praise for the acting in this series, as you know. I am a
Yes.
big fan of the acting quality of the series. But the point is, if I didn't say what I found troubling, then that would devalue my positive comments. Yeah, that is something that I, as the book reader, struggled with. But I think the whole thing on the whole is very, very good, and I really like the little like one of my highlights from this episode is actually the political chat between Moraine and like if I was going to give some highlights to this episode, hearing the wolves come was awesome. The political
Right.
chat between Moraine and Alana, love it, absolutely love it. And you think, really, they're your highlights? But yeah, they are. I love those. I thought they were so cool and interesting and like vibing with my understanding of the Wheel of Time. So I really, really like that. I think Matt's descent into madness is being done very well. But those are my favorite scenes. Those two, just they're so clever, and I love the wolves. I love the way that the wolves are being built up slowly. I was watching Everyday Negroes
Right.
channel, and like
I love that channel.
they're like he's gonna turn into a werewolf or whatever, and it's like and they're like one of them's like maybe they're doing this slow. I'm like yes they are, and it's a good thing. Like don't wish away don't wish away like all the progress in like 5 seconds. They're his powers are pretty. And one of the things one of them said was his powers are pretty weak compared to the others. I'm like, what kind of Matt have you been watching? Like Matt's got zero powers apart from bad luck and maybe getting mentally ill.
Yeah, he has no powers at this point.
But they're like, yeah, Egwene's like getting powerful now, and like Rand can blow down a door, and then he's like wisdom's on a whole other level. Don't even talk about wisdom.
I love their nicknames. Their nicknames are amazing.
Yeah, medieval McJagger is stuff. But shout out to that channel, guys. Go watch it. It's a good
Yeah,
channel.
check them out. Hilarious. What I will say too about
They're
that
good.
channel, I saw Daniel Green commented on one of their videos and they highlighted it.
Oh, nice, nice.
I commented on
Can I
their
just say
video and they
also?
highlighted it.
Oh, nice, Dusty.
I left a
Can I say
comment. I said, I'll tell you what I said. I
go on.
said, yeah, Brother Book is definitely an accurate description according to the source material. And that was what they call loyal, Brother Book.
Yeah, I know. And one of the things that's interesting is in the Daniel Green video, he like mentions when Nynaeve says in episode 4, like when she's like, "How did you meet Lan?" She's like, "I tracked him." He seems to suggest that isn't what she does in the book. That's absolutely what she does in the book. She totally
Yeah, she
tracks them.
tracks them.
Yeah, it's like, and
Well,
he seems to suggest like as if she could track Lan. She definitely does do so in the text. So I found that quite an odd comment because yeah,
there's
that
two tiers to that tracking. There's the actual woods craft, and then there's the one power.
yeah,
So she
sure,
tracked them in two ways.
sure, and like that's no problem. But the key point is that and like that doesn't annoy Lan. Like in the
He just
book,
kind of smirks
but
when she says that in the
in
show.
the book, that's like the first compliment he gives her, like ever.
Right.
Like he doesn't like comment on her looks or anything. He says, "Wow, you were able to track me."
Hmm.
Like shows her that sort of like level of respect. Like that would take someone with serious skill, and she's like, "Thank you, thank you very much," and doesn't quite know how to react. She's like, "I want to fight you, but you were just like said I was awesome, so it's kind of hard to fight you."
Right.
I love it. I love it. Uh,
Yeah. Favorite
Well,
scenes, real quick for me.
yeah, for you, go on.
I, hey, I liked the loyal. I like the introduction of loyal.
You like
I
Brother
don't care what
Book?
people say. Brother Book is awesome. I thought he did a good job, and I thought,
Acting wise,
yeah, acting wise, and
top
I'm seeing
notch.
that he has a very good screen presence. I'll say that. Um,
Yeah.
uh, what else? Oh, I love Perrin finally becoming Golden Eyes. That's wonder how that's going to resolve. And then,
Oh.
yeah. And if we're going back to 4, I really loved almost everything about book 4. I'm sorry, episode 4. Episode 4 was like almost the entire episode was off book, but it was so good.
It
It's
was.
mind-boggling that
It,
this episode that strayed so far from what was written
mm.
ends up being one of my favorites so far.
But it felt so legit, right? Like Nynaeve expressing her power for the first time in that way was absolutely spot on for her. It
Right.
absolutely fit, and like that was such a cool That's my favorite ending of an episode so far. Is her just going,
Right. Ah! The
and I'm just
anger, 90s
now you
classic
see
anger.
now you see screaming like that, Nynaeve, yes. Lan, no. Yeah, like when she did it, I was like, yeah, you whip that braid, girl. You whip that braid. You blow up like you're going Super Saiyan. I was like, I'm all for it. And Nynaeve, Perrin, Lan, these are my favorite characters. These are my absolute faves. And it's so cool to see them acted so well, to see their arc starting to really take some pace. We've now heard about Malkier. We've now seen the Golden Eyes. The Wolf Packs come at his call. We've seen her express her power through anger to heal. I mean, it's really happening. Um,
Right. What are your
and a few.
predictions for the next episode?
So I think the next episode is going to be a combination of some stuff that we get in the Great Hunt,
Hmm.
okay, and some stuff that is like what is said by Moraine prior. But I think we're going to see
Yeah.
some great hunt stuff because I
Yeah.
think it's going to be talking about making Nynaeve a novice, and I'm hoping that they don't make that mistake and they make her an accepted. Now, I was a little worried that they might just completely skip the idea of accepted to simplify it. So there's
I think
novices
they
and
have to
yet,
introduce it. Like they have to introduce it as a novice because accept that's a radical idea to make her accepted right away.
but that is what happens.
Oh, I'm not. Yeah, yeah, that's what it is. It's what happens. But I know when he's talking to everybody, and if they're trying to be traditionalists, they're not going to skip that step.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
But
yeah. But then they're gonna. I hope.
they're gonna. But I'm saying they're not going to talk about it right now. I don't think.
Yeah. Agreed. My key concern is, I was a little worried that the show was going to skip the idea of accepted entirely. Like just drop it.
Okay.
Just say, to simplify the thing, we'll have novices, and then you become a full sister. Now,
Okay.
there's one thing that makes me think they're not going to do that, which is
Okay.
in the X-rays. When they mention novice, if you click on it, it explains that they are novice, and it takes them many years, and some take up to 10 years to become accepted. So not everything in the X-rays is necessarily in the show, because the X-rays have mentioned Sidam and Sidar, and the show has not mentioned those things. But it's given me, when you said sometimes the bonus content will put you at ease,
Yes.
the bonus content is putting me at ease. I really, 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 really want them to just stick to the books on this and say Nynaeve is so freaking powerful that making her a novice just doesn't work, and because that's what they did in the books, and I think it's a good thing, and it makes her experience different from Egwene's and Elaine's, and it also would allow us to have my favorite chapter. Like, one of my favorite chapters in all the books is her going
Is
through
it
the
the
arches.
accepted test?
It is. I love that
Yeah.
scene. I love that chapter. In my own Wheel of Time fanfic that I wrote, it's the chapter that I got the most favorites on, the most follows, the most people say it's the best chapter I wrote, and it's because the accepted test is just awesome. Like, there's so much good stuff you can do with that, and like we get to see Naives later on, we get to see Egwene's, and they're just really amazing, amazing chapters. And I want one. I really, really want one. And I think we might see that early doors. And if we do, like, that's how I would want it to go. Like, let's get Nynaeve straight into accepted test. Let's get her straight into accepted, and then we can wait a couple of seasons, or at least a season, before we see Egwene's, and then that can give us a gap, which makes it more effective. I don't want them to be doing it at the same time. I don't want them to have that experience at the same time. I want them to be living different lives. But we'll see. I think we're going to be in the Borderlands by episode 7.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
I'll say this about episode 6. I think there will be elements of the Great Hunt, but it's going to be for different reasons.
Oh.
I think the Armelin is going to. I think she's going to return on episode 6.
Yeah.
And Moraine doesn't meet with Swan until the Great Hunt, so I think they're going to have some Great Hunt conversations regarding the scheming and the actual purpose that she was set upon. I think we're going to learn that possibly in the next episode.
What
and I
about
also
Matt's
think,
healing? Sorry, do you think Matt's healing?
Yeah, Matt. That's a good question. It's probably going to have to. I don't think it's going to be a complete healing. I don't know how they're going to handle that because Matt might be sidelined. It's possible he could be sidelined. He either will be healed fully. I don't know. That's a really hard question, isn't it? I don't know how they're going to play that.
Because that's the thing that happens when they go back to the tower in the Great Hunt, remember? That's the reason he goes back to the tower, is because he has to, even though he doesn't want to, because...
Well, here's the thing. We know Fodon Fane's around, so I don't know. It's kind of up in the air. I think he could either be healed and the dagger stolen, possibly, which will start the Great Hunt narrative there. But I do believe, there's a possibility of, Matt's definitely going to get healed, or at least talked about it, because Nynaeve is aware of his issue, which means
Mm.
Moraine's going to be aware. However, here's the tricky part. Nynaeve and Rand had a conversation about him not trusting the Aes Sedai at all.
Mm.
So I don't know if they're going to try to keep Matt and Rand hidden from Moraine, or if it's they're going to have to
because
come meet up in order to go to Fal Dara. So here's what I think
Matt
is going to happen.
afraid, right? They're afraid
Yeah,
that if they do channel, that they'll be gentled.
and they kind of still got to keep Rand and Matt secret. So here's what I think's going to happen. I think Swan comes back. They have a conversation. I don't know if Loyal's going to introduce the Eye of the World or if Swan will. I think one of the two will. Which
Controversial take. Controversial take. There may be no Eye of the World.
You think so? No Eye of the World?
Instead, I think it might be the Horn. They might
The
suggest
horn?
the
Just
horn.
the horn?
The Horn of Valir is up there. Yeah.
But why
And
would they need it though?
Because why would they need it?
Well, why would they go up there?
To blow the frickin' Horn of Valir and summon all of the heroes from the past ages to their defense. Heck
But they don't even know that they found the Dragon Reborn yet. How do they know?
Well, sorry, we're talking about Swan and Moraine here.
So well, I know the Horn of Valir was like a bonus.
But it's more than just a bonus, because they know that whoever has that is going to be significant winning the last battle. Like the Horn of Valir and the hunt for the Horn is like, that's like Excalibur, man. That's like the holy grail of this world.
I think they are going to go to Eye of the World. I hope they do. Like, how can they not go to the title of the first book? That'd be kind of weird.
Well, have you noticed they haven't called Series 1 The Eye of the World?
Well, they call Series 1. I don't think they call it anything.
They just call it Wheel of Time Series 1, exactly. So they don't have to.
That'd be so weird if they didn't, though. I'm hoping they do. Here's what I think will happen, hopefully, is that I think at episode 6 is when they start to know that, okay, they need to go to the Borderlands and do whatever they need to do there. But I also think that if they're going to incorporate Great Hunt, it's probably going to be in the next episode, either by Matt getting healed, Moraine and Swan having a discussion, because they don't talk until the Great Hunt.
And anything about novices or accepted was also Great Hunt, because they're not even in the tower in book 1.
So it's possible. I don't know. It's definitely difficult because Moraine would have to spirit everybody away. I would love to see like the ruins of Malkir. I'd love to see Fal Dara. Well, we know we're going to see Fal Dara. I don't know how the Blood Snow, at least depictions of the Blood Snow, incorporate with the next 3 episodes. But I'm hoping that they do go to the Blight.
Surely the Blood Snow will just be they'll do the Blood Snow just by them telling the story. They'll be like,
yeah, that's probably going to happen in Fal Dara.
Yeah. You think? No, I'm sure it'll be when Swan and Moraine are talking, because Swan and Moraine were present. They were the ones.
Yeah, there you go. Yep. There you go. Yeah.
So, like, why are we allies? Well, you remember we were in the room when flashback, and then it's like, I see the dragon. He takes his first breath on the mountain, and they were sent off with their initial quest as young girls, and then that will set up why these people who are apparently enemies are actually allies, but one's stuck at the tower and the other one's free to roam. And I think that will have to be established before we go much further.
Next episode. Has to be next episode.
Yeah. But anyway, we need to pull this through, because I just realized how long we've been talking.
All right. It's been a long time. Thank you for watching. From now on, our episodes are likely going to be shorter, since we're going to be covering single episodes instead of 2 at a time. Hopefully, Andrew could meet us up next session. Before we go, he told me specifically that the fourth episode was his favorite so far. He
Yeah,
did not
great
like the
episode.
depiction of Loyal, and he said that episode five was his least favorite. And he was kind of
Least.
in your camp regarding Lan and his depiction of emotion at the end of episode five.
Yeah, it's just it spent a long time on stepping, didn't it? Episode 5, like a long
Yeah,
time.
almost entirely the episode five was either we're talking about Steppen, the Warders, and the Bond, or we're dealing with Egwene and uh,
Perrin.
Perrin, and we got some short stuff about Rand meeting up with Loyal.
Yeah, but very little.
Uh, so yeah, there it is. Next episode will be likely shorter, at least probably half as long as this one. I'm very sorry to keep you up, Tristram. Hopefully,
No, I
Andrew will be
enjoyed it.
here,
Yeah.
and I won't have to speak his opinion on his behalf. I'm glad I was able to talk to him a little bit about the show yesterday. But yeah, he was definitely loved episode four.
Yeah,
Episode
me too.
five is his least favorite so far, and I was kind of
That did
surprised.
surprise me. Yeah. I think
Uh,
two's my least favorite so far.
Shadow Logoth.
Shadow Logoth, yeah. I just felt it was a bit of a like I enjoyed one, it was an introduction, really got things going. I really see three really built on the characters, like really like
Mhm.
started things like the wolves and like the Lan and Nynaeve interactions were just so interesting, so cool. And then four was just the best episode. It was just brilliant. I I preferred four. I think four was like a fantastic episode.
Yeah,
And
four is
and
my
I
favorite so far too.
but I really like this one as well because like the politics stuff, I love the exploration of like the Ajas, the Warders, the Bond, and like I really like the Perrin stuff as well. And I'm absolutely up for hating Valda, and I like the way it shows Tuathan. I'm all up for it. I feel that five was almost like a behind the scenes look at a lot of culture and ideas in the Wheel of Time, which I'm a big fan of. But it wasn't as good as
Yeah,
four.
yeah. I think
No
they just
way.
had to throw in a breather episode because four was just so crazy. So they kind of slowed
Yep,
the pace down a bit for episode five, which is fine for me. I liked
absolutely.
Loyal. I was like really excited to see him. But yeah, so next week we're gonna talk episode six. You heard our theories. Let's see what happens, and we'll talk about whether our theories come true, whether what our predictions are for the show. But yeah, check us out next week. I don't know if we're doing Saturday or Sunday again. We'll see. It all depends on all our schedules. But of course, these are always posted afterwards, so you don't have to watch them live explicitly. So thank you everybody for checking us out. Wow, this is probably the longest one we've done so far. But thank you, and join us next week.
Ciao.
All right, bye bye now.